A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock on Saturday, the 23rd of November. And this, my friends, is the weekend on GB News. Now, stock up on food and water as Storm Bert sweeps across the United Kingdom. Police warn against road travel in many parts of the country, with a red weather warning issued. We'll bring you the latest as Storm Bert batters Britain. Then Jeremy Clarkson has claimed he would be a terrible political leader and made calls for him to enter politics. But what do you think? Would Jeremy Clarkson make a cracking MP? And we have to talk about one of the biggest stories of the week, the Jaguar rebrand. What do you make of the car company's new look? I don't know what they were thinking. I'm Darren Grimes, and the weekend, it starts here. Now, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we'll be discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say to join that conversation. I've got it open right here, right now. Now, keeping me company in this hour is the broadcaster and journalist, Mike Parry, and the political commentator, Matthew Stadlin. But before we get stuck into today's stories, we're going to get your news headlines with Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Darren. The time is just after midday and these are your latest headlines. As Storm Bert continues to batter much of the UK, the Met Office has issued amber and yellow weather warnings, as well as 16 flood alerts being issued. This morning, winds of up to 68 miles per hour have been recorded and 13 centimetres of snow has fallen in some parts of the country. In Ireland, the Electricity Supply Board has said that high winds have caused power outages for around 60,000 customers. And in Lancashire, the championship game between Blackburn and Portsmouth has been postponed. Our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie is in County Down for us today and has been urging people to take care.
Late last night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had snow. Now we've been battered by winds and really, really ice-cold rain. It's not sleet. The rain is just so freezing cold. And what's happened is the roads are now flooded, trees are down, and underneath that line water is ice. So anybody that is out and about this morning, please, please be very, very careful.
The Ministry of Justice has said that immediate action has been taken after blueprints of prisons in England and Wales had been leaked online. The government has said it has become aware of a data breach in which detailed prison layouts had been shared on the dark web over the past 2 weeks. The blueprints are said to include the locations of cameras and sensors, with security officials now working to identify the source of the leak and who might benefit from the details. In royal news, the Princess of Wales has invited the child survivors of the Southport attack to her annual Christmas concerts. It comes after the Princess made a surprise visit with her husband William to meet the bereaved families of the victims in Southport last month. The Princess set her sights on being able to stage the Together at Christmas service this year, despite the health challenges she's faced in what the Prince of Wales described as a brutal year. Following a High Court ruling yesterday, Nikita Hand was awarded almost €250,000 in damages after she accused MMA fighter Conor McGregor of raping her back in 2018. However, in response to the ruling, McGregor took to social media platform X to say the following: "I will be appealing today's decision. I'm with my family now, focused on my future. Thank you to all my support worldwide." Meanwhile, outside the court yesterday, Nikita spoke emotionally about wanting to be a story of hope for victims of sexual assault.
I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice.
Although the government has introduced proposals for stricter measures on antisocial behaviour, because of their devolved powers, Scotland would not be included. The respect orders would clamp down on antisocial behaviour across the board, but one element people have expressed they're particularly pleased about is the new power to clamp down on e-bikes and e-scooters. In Glasgow, people have been asking if Scotland should now follow suit in order to tighten policing around this issue.
England are about to tie that in with their new ASBO tight order, respect orders. I think Scotland needs to have a look at how we're handling them.
Very much so, yeah. Because, as I say to you, especially the electric ones, because they can, a bit of speed, I just almost get bumped into just walking up there and now.
I'm an elderly person and I'm always scared, they could knock you down.
Exactly.
And they don't care. They should stop at traffic lights because any other cyclists are giving them a bad name. And I'm friends with a couple of near misses with them as well, so.
Remember the old ASBOs? Well, do you think Scotland should do a wee rework as well?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the first grey seal pup of the season has been born at a former weapons testing site along the Suffolk coastline. The birth marks the 4th year in a row of seals breeding there. It began following reduced visitor access during the pandemic. The National Trust has said that more than 130 seal pups were born there last year, with the breeding site now being described as a brilliant wildlife success story. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. It's back to Darren.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers very much, Sophie. We're going to get stuck into today's topics now. Storm Bert, first of all. It's begun to descend on the United Kingdom, with the Met Office warning of power outages and road closures across the country this weekend. Snow, rain and wind alerts are already in place, with 2 areas in Ireland facing a rare red warning for heavy rain. Well, joining me now is our very own hero, Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie. Doogie, it's nice to see that you're not blowing in the wind like goodness only knows what right now. But, I mean, it's subsiding, but I assume that the aftermath is very much still alive and with us.
Well, it is, and yes, you're right that the 8 o'clock hit this morning. I was finding it hard to actually stand up. There was winds of close to 70 miles an hour battering us. That followed at 3 o'clock this morning. We had snow that you can imagine with the wind behind it was driving in, but that snow really got washed away by the rain that then came in. And what happened then was that the roads started to flood. I've come up through 2 or 3 main roads there, and there is serious floods on those roads. But early this morning, any gritting that had been done on those roads, you can imagine, was washed away by the rain, so no longer became effective. And actually, on my way to the story this morning, when we were hitting floods, you could actually feel the car not aquaplaning, but sliding on the roads because of the ice below it. So it made it extremely treacherous. We've had trees down. EBNI, the Power Service of Northern Ireland, has been working very hard to put those back on. We've seen that just outside here in Newton Ards, one of the main lines going in to the area. A tree came down across it, and it's quite a job actually to dig that line out of a tree without breaking the line. It is a 9k line that goes in, so it's quite substantial, and it also means that the roads have to be closed, because don't forget, if you come across a tree that's down, don't go into it, because the power line may not be broken and still be live. And of course, if you touch that, well, it'll not be good for anybody concerned. But I've actually came here on the way to the next part, and this is Strangford Lough, or Strong Fjord, named by the Vikings. And this morning, the seaweed, you can still see seaweed all around me here, that was washed up onto the top end of it. Now, the tide has gone out, but there's an eerie mist that has came down, and temperatures once again are now beginning to drop, which means that the roads are still not clear. So if we get a clear sky tonight and this coldness still comes in, roads will become extremely treacherous. So Northern Ireland has had its fair share of it. The Republic of Ireland, we must say, has got it worse, especially deep into the south in Cork and West Galway, where there's about 60,000 homes out of power because of the severity of that wind when it came off the Atlantic this morning and hit them. But that storm is now with yourselves across the Irish Sea and into the UK. My advice to anybody is, if the same gusts are on them that I was facing this morning, please, please be very careful.
Doogie, has there been enough in the way of preparation for this? We've known it was coming. Has there been enough of an actual look by the authorities into preparing for a battering by Bert?
Well, I would be the first to call out the authorities on anything like that. And I must say, this morning we have seen councils out clearing drains and so forth with the debris that's went into it. We have seen the Electricity Service of Northern Ireland working with the Forestry Commission, cutting up those trees, etc. They have moved extremely quickly, and for once, I must say, I am very impressed by how prepared they actually were at this point.
Well, that's good to know. That's reassuring. To be honest with you, Doogie, I wasn't expecting you to say that, so kudos to them for once, eh? Right, Doogie Beattie there in Northern Ireland, looking wet and worse for wear, but brilliant all the same. Thank you very much for that update. Now, my friends, recession fears are growing after new data showed that business activity in the United Kingdom shrunk for the first time since Liz Truss's mini-budget. I don't know about you, but I haven't heard many howls in the same way that we did back then against Rachel Reeves. But private businesses named and shamed the new National Insurance Contribution Policy as the primary factor behind their reduced business activity. But The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has reiterated her claim that the budget provides stable foundations for growth. Well, joining us to discuss this is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, thank you very much for your company. Now, I mean, looking at all of this, I'm just sort of struck by the way in which there haven't been the same howls that there were after Liz Truss. I was looking at the way in which the strength of the pound against the dollar has collapsed. And they were the kind of things that happened, market interventions, that led to the downfall of Liz Truss. I mean, just how serious is this for the Labour government?
Well, I've heard it called by mostly Conservatives and mostly left of centre Conservative. They've called it the twin terror of Liz Truss's mini-budget back in 2022. And there certainly are similarities. As you say, the private sector has shrunk to a 13-month low in November. It seems as a direct result of this budget, and the pound has hit a new low against the dollar. Now, why is that? Well, the main reason is this increase in national insurance tax for employers. During the general election campaign, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer promised that they wouldn't raise taxes on working people. They didn't define exactly what that meant, but they since have, and they've said that it means no rise in tax on income tax, VAT or national insurance for employees. They've managed to find a loophole in their own rules there by increasing tax on national insurance on employers. That means that anyone who employs anyone will have to pay extra national insurance, they'll have to pay extra into the country's pension pot from April 2025. Now, that is having a huge effect on businesses. Lots of businesses, particularly those who operate with very thin margins, so, the retail sector, the care sector, places where those on the ground aren't actually paid very much. They just can't afford these rises to national insurance contributions. So they are laying people off in order to avoid that rise in April. That's having a big effect on individuals. We are seeing unemployment very slowly beginning to creep up. And it is also, as we've seen today, having an effect on the economy. The private sector is shrinking as businesses take drastic decisions, making swathes of cuts in order to avoid this rise in national insurance. Now, Rachel Reeves would argue and has argued that the changes that she made in the budget were necessary because without these changes, she says, you can't lay the proper foundations for growth. She says that we have to sort of plug this black hole in the economy, which she's talked about a lot, the black hole which allegedly the Conservatives left in the economy. And only once that's done can this Labour government start focusing on growth. Some businesses think differently. They worry that by making it more difficult for them to hire, in some cases making it impossible for them to make any other decision than to fire staff, she is actually shrinking the economy and isn't contributing to growth at all. Only time will tell, but Rachel Reeves will be pretty nervous today.
Yeah, I mean, and Olivia, the semantics right around this won't impact working people, well, actually, it very much does if you don't get hired as a consequence, if you don't get a pay rise as a consequence. There are knock-on effects from this employer national insurance contribution increase. But, Olivia, thank you very much for that analysis, expert as ever. That's Olivia Utley there. Right, we're going to see what my panel make of this. We've got the political commentator, Matthew Stadlin, on my left, in more ways than one, and the broadcaster and journalist Mike Parry on my right. Matthew, I'll start with you. I mean, I remember, in fact, Matthew, I probably remember you saying similar things. When Liz Truss, in your words, I think I've got this right, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but crashed the economy, everyone was saying, on your side of the political fence, she's got to go. I mean, does Rachel Reeves have to go if the economy is going to face a downturn as a consequence?
I don't think we're in anywhere like the situation that we were in the immediate aftermath of that Liz Truss budget. And there's no doubt that Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak repaired some of the damage that she did to the economy. But on this budget, there are clearly some early warning signs, and I was worried from the word go that hitting employers in this way, although arguably not technically a breach of the manifesto, that's open for interpretation, might have a negative impact on growth. And I've said all along as well that Labour have put growth front and centre of their mission, because that's what they have. So if we don't get growth as a consequence of this and future budgets, then Labour will pay a heavy price for that, and we, the electorate, will pay a price as well, because we all, I think, agree that we want and need growth. That said, we're talking about this partly based on a Telegraph article this morning warning about recession. If you go down to about paragraph 4 or 5, it accepts and admits that most economists do not think we're about to enter a recession.
But they do say that in quarter 4 there could be a contraction, right? There could actually be a hit in quarter 4, so it won't lead to a recession, but there will be a downturn in quarter 4. I mean, Mike, you're long enough in the tooth to have remembered Labour governments in the past that have done similar measures.
And all sorts of governments.
So, I mean, do you think this is just a reminder to people that, well, if you vote Labour, you get what you're given?
Yeah, because socialists don't know how to run economies. They are economically illiterate. I mean, Matthew's made a very good case there for we need growth. How can you get growth when you pile taxes on working people? How can you get growth when you introduce red tape across the whole of the private sector? How can you introduce growth when you take money from the 27 million people in the private sector to give it to the 5 million people in the public sector? Because the public sector is not productive. It's counterproductive. When they gave that money to the public sector, they didn't ask for any concessions. They didn't ask for anything back. Now, Matthew said that the Telegraph article this morning, he's picked out a favourite paragraph, but actually the truth of it is this. Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, a survey showed activity among private sector companies shrank for the first time in more than a year in November. Sterling has slid 0.6%. These are huge alarm bells ringing in our economy, which means it's going south, it's not going north. And can I also point out that I'm having my doubts about whether Rachel Reeves is in any way qualified to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. Her budget was a budget that's going to send us into recession, and we know now that she actually never was the economist she thought she could tell us she was. She worked in retail banking, helping people with problems at the Halifax and the Bank of Scotland.
I mean, Matthew, do you have an issue with the potential porky pies on a CV?
Well, my immediate concern is that Mike seems as though he's on the point of self-combustion, and that's without...
No, not at all. I have concern for my country. You don't seem to have that concern.
And that's without Everton playing football yet this weekend. No, if Mike thinks that socialists, so-called, are economically illiterate, I don't know whether he'd call Tony Blair and Gordon Brown socialists, but the economy... Let me finish, Mike. I didn't interrupt.
Socialists. Yeah, go on.
Tony Blair and Gordon Brown ran the economy pretty effectively for a while. Then we have to...
Smashing up the pensions industry.
Then we had the crash, didn't we? But that was very much an international crash, and because of not enough regulation, actually, and on the housing market. I don't think Mike is economically literate when it comes to laying the foundation stones for longer-term growth. One of the big problems we've got in this country, and I think we'd all agree, is we haven't invested enough. The Tories didn't invest enough when interest rates were low, and we are reaping the consequences of that. If you have a failing NHS, not because the staff there don't work hard, but because there isn't enough investment. Maybe it is not well enough organised. We can have a debate about that. Wes Streeting is looking into that as we speak. But if you don't have a functioning NHS, if you don't have a functioning school system, or a school system that isn't really, really flourishing at its maximum, optimum level, you don't have the conditions for growth if you're not building houses. And that's what Rachel Reeves is doing. And if you had done something, if you had been running the budget, our public services would have been further on their knees, if that's possible, than they already are at the moment.
Briefly, do you have a problem with what Mike said in that, you know, Rachel wasn't the economist that potentially that...
Well, she wasn't. Well, she's rewritten her CV, it seems, on LinkedIn or whatever.
And downgraded herself.
You can't expect me. You can't expect me to defend that. I'm not a spokesperson for Rachel Reeves. I'm a journalist.
And by the way,
is this not Mike's point, though? That she doesn't know what she's doing.
No, that's a different thing.
She doesn't know what she's doing. It is my point.
The implication of her changing her CV is that she wasn't totally straight about it. Yeah. And I have a problem with that. Okay. But it doesn't mean she's not qualified to run the economy. That's a different thing.
We'll leave that there.
She's
Mike,
got no qualifications.
We'll come back to you. That's Matthew Stadlin and Mike Parry there. Now, my friends, for all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, you can go to our website. We're at gbnews.com. Now, my friends, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. We've got loads more coming up, including this. Jeremy Clarkson has claimed he would be a terrible political leader amid calls for him to enter politics. But what do you think at home? Would Jeremy Clarkson make a good Member of Parliament? We've got all of that and more to come. You're with GB News, my friends. We're Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Bansky's Girl with Balloon is arguably one of the artist's most recognisable images. So when a limited edition print signed by the artist was stolen from Grove Gallery in London, an investigation was launched by the Metropolitan Police's flying squad. The work was thankfully retrieved. The desire to own great works of art has once again become evident this week, albeit a little further afield on the continent. Police in Italy have uncovered a criminal network forging artworks by Bansky, Andy Warhol, Pablo Picasso and others. Investigators said that they've seized more than 2,100 fake pieces of art with a potential market value of about £165 million. With me to discuss that case is the Chief Executive of Grove Gallery, James Ryan.
The art world needs to tighten up. It is known as a bit of a Wild West out there because people will try and chance it with these forgeries. You're quite right, there's only one actual original, but even auction houses have been hoodwinked before.
The burglary that you suffered is sub judice, so we have to be careful what we say about it. But it must have been a bit of a shock to you. I mean, was it a broken window, a smashed door?
At 10, 11 o'clock at night and just hammer straight through, shoulder barging through the door and then in and out, you know, gone in 60 seconds. I must say, I know...
Obviously, that targeted attack. The person would have known what he or she was after. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I must say, I know they cop a lot of, flack, the police force, but the flying squad got the artwork back within 3 days. They were fantastic. So, yeah, I've never heard or seen, other than the Thomas Crown Affair type film, I just didn't think it'd be happening to little old me, in Fitzrovia, but it did, and thankfully we got it back.
GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
A very warm welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Now, despite being the face of British farming, Jeremy Clarkson has pushed back against calls for him to become more involved in politics. The former Top Gear presenter helped organise the mass agricultural protest in London on Tuesday, calling for the government to rethink their inheritance tax changes. But Clarkson now says that he'd be a terrible political leader. Speaking to The Times, Clarkson said this: "I'm a journalist at heart. I prefer throwing rocks at people than having them thrown at me." Well, let's see what my panel make of this. Matthew Stadlin and Mike Parry are still with me in the studio. Mike, I'll start with you this time. Yeah. I mean, he's got a point there that you get it both barrels if you're a politician.
Yes. Look, Jeremy Clarkson's a great guy, in my view. I like successful people, like people who make a huge contribution to the life of Britain, which he does. But there's a huge difference between being successful as a broadcaster and a businessman and being a politician. unusually in this country, they're so divided. In America, Donald Trump can go around bringing any half-bake into government he wants, and already he's had to let at least one senior appointment go because they were so unsuited to the job. But in this country, I always used to say, people like Lord Sugar, you know, people like Virgin boss Richard Branson, people like Dyson, successful businessmen should get into politics because they know how to run things, so can they run the country. But the other side is, in this country, the civil service. And you never get past the civil service. Now, I know what you do. So you've got to know how to operate in the political world before you can do anything. And Jeremy would be a hopeless politician.
But a lot of people are saying, hang on.
Yeah.
We need our Trump, right? We need a disruptor who's going to really shake things up.
I totally agree, but it can't work in the system in this country. Well, the reason why Brexit never got done was because of the blob. Do you see what I mean? Because they were determined. I mean, how many millions of civil servants are there in Whitehall who stop anything happening unless they want it to happen?
So let me give myself as a humble example, if I may. So I'm doing what Clarkson does, to an extent, throwing stones from the outside. I
thought you meant farming. I thought you were going to say you want to farm.
A bit more constructively, perhaps, than Clarkson. But I was heavily critical of the Conservatives. Now we've got a Labour government, and unlike Labour ministers, I don't have to sit here and defend everything that they advance. Because I'm my own man, I'm answerable to nobody. I can say exactly what I want. It's much harder when you're in government, partly because you've actually got to make decisions, and also if you're part of government, if you're part of the cabinet, you basically have to defend the government line, even if privately you might disagree with it. Now, let's look at the challenges of actually being in power. We do have a disruptor, Nigel Farage. He's the biggest political disruptor of the last 20 years. You might make a case to say that he's as successful in some senses as Tony Blair in terms of his impact as a political figure, but he's never been in government. And that is a big shift, and I think he would be a disastrous Prime Minister. He's a brilliant campaigner, even if you thoroughly disagree with him like I do. Look at Jeremy Corbyn as one other quick example. He was a very effective campaigner. I couldn't vote to him to be Prime Minister.
People are crying out for that authenticity, right? Thomas has just written in, and Thomas says Clarkson would be a great politician. He says it the way it is, a man of the people.
That doesn't work in politics in this country. When you say it as it is, blankly and bang in the face, it doesn't work. Mrs Thatcher was so clever because she got into power and then spent 2 years, 2.5 years, analysing what needed to happen, and then, but she didn't come in on day one and say, right, I'm going to cut taxes, right, I'm going to sell council houses. She did it by gradual degrees, and that's the only way you can do it. And people like Clarkson don't have the patience to go through the political system gradually. I think he's a great guy, but he would be a terrible politician.
Well, arguably, Mrs Thatcher couldn't have done anything without the Falklands War, right?
Well, you may be right. That definitely gave her a huge lift because she proved to be a great leader. But she still would have got there in the end.
But Mike and I agree to some extent on this, although Mike's a bit of a fan of Clarkson and I'm certainly not. I should say, for the sake of balance, that he's obviously got a huge number of fans in this country. But it was interesting when he was interviewed by the BBC the other day, and he was asked whether he was angry, effectively, on behalf of the farmers. He said, well, I can't really be angry on behalf of other people. It was though he was terrified of tripping up over his own anti-woke agenda.
I don't think he did well against Victoria Derbyshire.
I don't think he did. I thought it was embarrassing because he was challenged with something he was said in the Times or Sunday Times in 2021.
That's right.
When, as I understand it, he said that the critical reason that he bought his farm was to avoid inheritance tax. Nothing illegal, by the way, about that. And now he said, "Oh well, I'm not. That's not a fact." And then he went back over. He said he bought it because he wanted to shoot it. He said, but it came with the advantage.
But he then got into the farming community, and he's now become a champion for farmers because he lives within the farming community. So he's seen. I mean, look, farmers produce food, and again, you know, the economically illiterate Labour government don't understand that if you stop food being grown, we'll have to import it.
We're not going to stop. It's not going to stop.
It will.
Food
If farms get sold off. If farms get sold off, we won't be selling food. We'll be importing it. What happens if the storms hit Spain again and food in Spain doubles in price and we've got to import it?
Because they think, well, if I'm having to sell off 20% of the land, I might as well sell the whole thing because it's not financially viable.
Well, and then there's a conversation conversation to be had about, if that happens, who buys that land?
Yes.
Is it going to be mega farms? I'm not a fan of mega farms.
Well, Bill Gates was in number 10.
No, let's not wangle Bill Gates. It will be wangling in Marcus Rashford in a second. Look, as a journalist,
is he a farmer?
No, but he gets wangled in. He gets wangled into almost every conversation by the right. No, look, as a journalist,
Bill Gates does own farmland in the United States of America.
I think he's America's biggest landowner. I think Bill Gates is America's biggest landowner.
Yes.
And when you talk about farms in America and New Zealand, you're talking about 35 square miles of farms, OK? And that can produce food very cheaply because of the scale of
my critique of this particular policy in the budget would be that it may have unintended consequences. To my mind, I hope it was designed to go after massive landowners who own land.
There's very few of them,
Let me just make my point.
Let me make few of them.
Who buy up land in part to avoid inheritance tax, and that's completely fair. I think an unintended consequence may be that the threshold is too low and that family farms may really suffer as a consequence of this, but we're not going to stop producing food.
Well, I think that's a very generous interpretation, because I'm of the view that actually maybe this will be a pretty good way for a government that wants to pave over the countryside with wind farms and solar panels.
Yeah, exactly, all over the place. I mean, so far in the show, Matt has really smashed Labour on the head 2 or 3 times. He's a very sensible man.
All right, we've got Grumpy Grandad says, I would sooner have Jeremy running the nation than Starmer. Jeremy can relate to normal people. That's what missing is in politics today.
Yeah.
That's why Nigel is doing great. You heard of him, Nigel Farage?
Yeah, absolutely.
Once or twice.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, thank you very much to my panel there. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. We've got lots more coming up. First of all, though, we're going to get you news with Sophie Reaper.
A very good afternoon to you. Let's take a look at your top stories for this hour. And we'll start now with some breaking news. A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after one man has died and another was critically injured during a shooting in Birmingham. Police were called to Edgbaston at around 11 o'clock last night. One man in his 20s was found in a car but was pronounced dead at the scene. Another man in his 30s was found injured at a bus stop and was then taken for treatment at hospital. West Midlands Police now say a man in his 30s was arrested and remains in custody. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. Elsewhere, as Storm Bert continues to batter much of the UK, the Met Office has issued amber and yellow weather warnings, as well as 16 flood alerts being issued. This morning, winds of up to 68 miles per hour have been recorded and 13 centimetres of snow have fallen in some parts of the country. In Ireland, the Electricity Supply Board has said that high winds have caused power outages for around 60,000 customers. And in Lancashire, the championship game between Blackburn and Portsmouth has been postponed. Following a High Court ruling yesterday, Nikita Hand was awarded almost €250,000 in damages. That's after she accused MMA fighter Conor McGregor of raping her back in 2018. However, in response to the ruling, McGregor took to social media platform X to say the following: I'll be appealing today's decision. I'm with my family now, focused on my future. Thank you to all my support worldwide. Meanwhile, outside the court yesterday, Nikita spoke emotionally about wanting to be a story of hope for victims of sexual assault.
I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice.
And Zayn Malik will begin his nationwide tour today, with this being his first performance since the funeral of former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne earlier this week. Held in Buckinghamshire, Zayn attended the funeral on Wednesday alongside other former band members Harry Styles, Niall Horan and Louis Tomlinson. Zayn's tour was scheduled to kick off in Edinburgh on the day of Liam's funeral, but the date was moved as a result. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you as ever, Sophie. Isn't she brilliant? Now, my friends, Jill has written in and Jill says, oh, look, Darren is reading out comments from Grumpy Grandad. Is he paying you, Darren? Well, I always get accused of this. I always get accused of this. Jill, I've read out your comment now. Right, remember to let me know all your thoughts on the stories we've been discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join that conversation there with my good friend, Grumpy Grandad. No, I'm just joking. Lots more coming up. Storm Bert, it's hit the United Kingdom. Snow closing roads and strong rains and winds expected to cause further travel disruption and potential flooding. We'll bring you the latest as Storm Bert batters Britain and Storm Mike batters the studio. All of that and more to come. I'm Darren Grimes and you're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. There is a lot going on this weekend. Storm Bert bringing heavy snow, outbreaks of rain, strong winds as well. There will be disruption through the rest of Saturday and Sunday as well. We can see it nicely on the pressure pattern. Storm Bert sat to the northwest of the UK. Isobars tightly packed together, indicating strong winds as well. And overnight, we've seen heavy rain push north and eastwards, bumping into cold air. Temperatures down to -12 last night across parts of Scotland, so we've seen heavy snow. However, this is turning back to rain through the rest of the day for much of the country. An amber warning out across Scotland till the mid-afternoon period for snow and ice. Windy for everyone, gusts 60, 70 miles an hour around the coast, but turning incredibly mild, 16, 17 Celsius across the south. Further heavy rain pushing northwards as we go through the evening time. But let's look at that in more detail. We can see the snow starting to ease across Scotland, still temperatures barely above freezing. Outbreaks of rain around the coast, cloudy with further outbreaks of rain Northern Ireland and Northern England as well. Snow melting here leading to some localised flooding. Localised flooding across parts of England and Wales, particularly in the west, with some heavy outbreaks of rain and strong winds too. And very little changes as we move through the evening and overnight. Further outbreaks of heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, particularly across parts of England and Wales. It stays windy as well, again around the west and along the south coast as well. Gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour or so. An incredibly mild night, temperatures 15 Celsius in one or two spots. Generally most places in double figures to start Sunday, but it won't feel that mild out there. Strong winds, outbreaks of rain across England and Wales. Something a little brighter, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, blustery showers here. The wind's picking up again as the centre of the low pushes a little closer through the day. Further rain just continues across England and Wales. Met Office warnings remain in force for wind and rain through the day. See you soon.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. We're talking about farming there, and Jerry says we only grow half the food we need in this country, but they want the farmers to give up their land for rewilding and useless solar farms. We need food security, not net zero nonsense. And Nikki says the lefties can't seem to grasp that food production will be lost if the farmers have to pay inheritance tax but are cash poor. They will have to sell their land to pay. Then that land will probably be lost to agriculture, so so there is less land to produce food. Are they really so dense they can't see it? So there's a lot of conversation going on there about that particular issue. A lot of you with tractor emojis in your names as well. Now, my friends, Storm Bert has hit the United Kingdom with the Met Office warning of power outages and road closures across the country this weekend. Snow, rain and wind alerts are already in place, with 2 areas in Ireland facing a rare red warning for heavy rain. Well, joining me now is our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who, hell, he has taken quite a beating. Beattie's been beaten, and it's less so now, but that's one hell of an almighty puddle behind you.
Well, indeed, this morning we got hit about 3 o'clock with huge snowstorms, driving wind on the back of them. That snow then turned to rain. And still the driving wind came. This morning I was nearly blown off my feet on several occasions and soaked, I must say. But it brought down trees which caught power lines. There's been many GAA and football pitches flooded as rivers burst their banks. But as Northern Ireland is getting back to normality, in fact, you know, I mean, it is quite bizarre. Nature's lovely. The calm now has happened after the storm. But we've seen the electricity service out, cutting up trees, reconnecting homes. But the real point to watch here is things like this behind me. You look at this. This is the main road from Cumber to Dundonald, just outside Belfast. Very, very fast stretch of the road outside Cumber. And you can see what's happened here. The river down in the bottom end has actually burst its banks. There's severe flooding here, and it's on a corner. So you can see as cars are coming round one corner and over the brow of the hill on another one, people are having to take the chance at getting round that flood because you couldn't drive through it. You had aquaplane in the middle of it, and in fact there's a bus coming now, and what you're seeing then is people having to brake very hard as they approach it, and this could well be the type of thing that causes a very serious accident. So really the storm has passed, but the danger is very much still there. I mean, I've been reporting on storms the last 3 years in GB News, and some of them haven't really been storms, but this one for that 6-hour period was definitely there. It was definitely a big storm, and this is the aftermath of it. So anybody out and about, please be aware of things like this at the side of the roads. What it's like in England right now, I don't know, but I'm sure you are getting what we got earlier on.
Well, I mean, I know. I was looking out for that bus. Where's that bus gone? I was excited. Down the road. We've missed it.
So was the people on it.
Yeah. Well, Doogie Beattie, thank you very much for that update. I know for a fact in County Durham it is covered in snow where I'm from.
It's beautiful.
Well, yeah.
County Durham under snow.
Yeah.
Beautiful
nature. It is pretty. Rita points out, fat lot of good the solar farms would do in this weather.
Exactly. Or I mean, do you know what? The wind farms would be useless in this weather because if the wind blows too harshly, they have to lock up the propellers.
Just for our radio listeners, we've got some beautiful scenes of snow there. I'll find out where that is actually, but wherever it is, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
The irony, guys, about what you're doing there, mocking the importance of climate change. And by the way, I agree with you that snow is stunning. Well, let me make my point, because otherwise we can't have a debate about it, is that actually climate change, and I'm not saying that this storm itself has been caused by climate change, but the effects of climate change are ravaging communities and countries, and it's incredibly scary.
It's called weather.
Okie dokie. Right, folks, you with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. We've got lots more coming up. We've got to talk about one of the biggest stories of the week. Oh, I just groan. The Jaguar rebrand. What do you make of the car company's new look? I think they must have a death wish. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses whilst staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by 1 simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things, but it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard-to-treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. I want to read out some of your comments here we'll find out what he's got to say for himself and let the man speak for himself. But Drew says, I bet Stadlin is the only person to love the new Jaguar rebrand. And then further comments on this. Paul at PW, it could be Paul. Darren, here's my thoughts on the Jag rebrand. Rest in peace, Jaguar. It was nice knowing you. Get ready for extinction, go woke, go broke. And my friends, this happened in the United States of America where Bud Light tried bringing in a load of trans influencers to sell the product. I mean, I don't know what bloke you've ever seen consuming a Bud Light that thinks, what I really care about is the trans issue. And they massively lost a whole load of customers. Jenny says, one good thing about the weather, Darren, it might stop the small boats coming for a day or two. Well, yeah, you could be right there. Right, now let's have a look at this. Well, it's one of the most bizarre stories from earlier in the week as Jaguar ditched its iconic Big Cat logo as part of what can only be described as a woke rebrand. The badge that had been used for decades on bonnets of British cars, even the Prime Minister's car, has been swapped for a strange geometric J badge. They've also released a brand new advert. I could scarcely... Without a car, by the way. I mean, what kind of car brand advert is this meant to be? Which Elon Musk has even criticised and asked if the company even sold cars. Right, we're going to see what my panel make of this. I mean, we've got it on the screen there for our radio listeners. And if they've not seen it, by the way, they're wearing these multicoloured outfits. It's sort of gender-bending, God only knows what. It's hallucinogenic. It looks like, someone's taken too many mushrooms.
I totally agree.
Mike Porky-Perry and Matthew Stadlin. I've got to introduce you first of all, or people won't know who you are.
you wouldn't have a clue what that advert was for. If somebody just showed you
It
the
says
advert...
Jaguar on it, Mike.
No.
It literally says Jaguar on it.
I don't care. You wouldn't know that it was a Jaguar car.
What I will say, Mike, it says copy nothing on that advert. I wouldn't worry about that, Jaguar.
Absolutely.
No one will be copying that.
Right. Now, let me just tell you this. I'm an owner of 4 Jaguars. Okay?
4 Jags, Mike.
Right.
Good for you.
Now, the very first one I had was an XJS in British Racing Green.
Wow.
It was the proudest car I've ever had, and it was the old-fashioned XJS. And Jaguar then did a deal with me for 6 years in which I got a Jaguar XF. I had 3 successive ones, blue, silver and black. And then Mercedes rang me up, because I was quite popular as a radio presenter in those days, and offered me a better deal. So I gave up Jaguar and I went to Mercedes. Now, the point I'm making is this. Can you imagine Mercedes or even BMW? We all know the BMW logo, don't we? It's blue and white and it's circular. It's one of the most famous logos in the world. Can you imagine stellar car companies like that giving up their logo? The Jaguar logo is wonderful, it's brilliant, it's a Jaguar face, and the first time I got one of the new Jags, an XF, in my car, on the passenger seat, was a paper opener with that Jaguar, the logo we've just seen, Leaping
Very
Jaguar.
nice.
And so I'm saying, this is from Jaguar, thank you for driving our car. It's a very, very proud brand, it's very British. The owners of Jaguar, of course, are not British, so I think they may have lost the connection between Jaguar and the British people.
Well, they've certainly lost something, their marbles, perhaps. But, Mike, I tell you what, you did it all without Lord Ali, so that's to be lauded. But I tell you what, Mercedes, if you're listening, I'm on the blower. My phone is just a...
Now that we've gone through Mike's extensive car owning history, could I say something briefly?
Of course.
Actually, I've got quite a bit to say, so I'll speak very quickly. One, my wife, when I met her, before she was my wife, obviously, owned a Jaguar. I found it very uncomfortable. But it is just was a bit small for me. I'm not keen on
Jaguars
those
are
types of
huge
seats.
cars.
Yeah, they're long, but there wasn't much space for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a huge man, Mike.
Okay.
Now, the next point I'd like to make is this. What is your fundamental problem with this advert, chaps? Because there has been a massive backlash about it, and I'm not sure it's the bright colours of the clothes and the backdrops, which I thought was rather attractive. What's your problem with it? I get the point about the logo. Yeah. What's your problem with the advert?
Well,
is it the people in it?
The logo
Is
and
it the people in it?
Well, look at the hairstyles, look at the colours, look at where's the car?
But you talked about gender bending.
Yeah.
What's your problem with people who have questions about their gender?
What's it got to do with Jaguar?
What's got to do with the car? What's a white? So if we got Mike advertising it, would you be saying what's the point of having an older white man?
The old adverts
it?
used to be in the vein of 007, right? It used to be this classic British car that it had sex appeal. It
You sound like a totalitarian, Derek.
I know. I just sound like someone that doesn't.
Must be exactly as they've always been.
I just sound like someone that doesn't want my country and the brands associated with it to turn into complete woke madness.
Sorry, it's your country, it's my country, it's the country belonging to the people in the advert, assuming that they live here and assuming that they're British or they have a right to be here. This is all of our country. You don't get to dictate our adverts.
You were never the target audience for Jaguar. You were never going to buy one of them.
Sorry, why not?
Because you just said that they're horrible cars.
Yeah, but they don't know that. They don't know that.
To me, it's not to do with gender bending. It's Jaguar cars, and that advert has nothing to do with Jaguar. And I tell you what, it's already hitting home. Here's a letter in this morning's Daily Telegraph. Jaguar has lost its way by planning to change the iconic growler. I doubt if BMW, Audi and Mercedes would foolishly do it. Think again, Jaguar. Bye-bye. From a gentleman in Crablington,
what is it about the
Northumberland.
anti-woke brigade, the angry, red-faced anti-woke brigade who gets so triggered by an advert? I'm middle class, I'm white, I'm successful, I'm relatively affluent, and I don't get triggered by adverts.
Matt, that advert will not convince anybody to buy a Jaguar car. It's poor marketing.
OK, we'll leave that there and let you decide at home. Thank you to my panel there, though. That's the broadcaster and journalist Mike Parry and the political commentator Matthew Stadlin. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on the show. Don't go away. First of all, though, my friends, we're going to get a look at the weather with Greg. Horrible.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Over the rest of the weekend, Storm Bert continues to bring some wet and windy weather for many of us and turning increasingly mild as well. Temperatures going from well below average to well above average over the next 24 hours. We can see that on the latest chart. Storm Bert just sat to the northwest with its centre, but outbreaks of rain across much of the country. Snow melt across northern England, Scotland as well, as that mild air continues to stream northwards. The rain particularly heavy across parts of England and Wales, northwest England, Wales, the West Country. Rainfall totals really building, some localised flooding. Exceptionally mild across England and Wales, temperatures 13, 14, 15 Celsius above where they should be during the day for this time of year. Sunday itself, a wet start across England and Wales. Outbreaks of heavy rain, some tricky travelling conditions first thing, some localised flooding, particularly across western parts, a mild start too. Brighter for Northern Ireland, Scotland, with some sunny spells but blustery showers. The wind starting to pick up across the northwest of Scotland too, as the centre of the low edges a little nearer. Mild as well, temperatures starting to reach double figures after a cold few days across Scotland. Through the day on Sunday, rain continues across parts of the Midlands, southwest England, and stretching across towards the Wash as well. To the southeast of this, some brighter spells, largely cloudy to the north across Wales and northern England, with some showers, blustery showers, Northern Ireland and Scotland too. Some longer spells of rain and wind gusts still 50, 60 miles an hour or so. So there will be some disruption through the day on Sunday. Into the evening time, this rain just continues to push its way eastwards, bringing rain into southeast England. Later, blustery showers elsewhere. And it stays unsettled as we move through next week as well. Further sunny spells and heavy rain at times too. See you again soon.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, oh, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout. Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, it's 1 o'clock on Saturday the 23rd of November. This is The Weekend on GB News. Stock up on food and water as Storm Bert sweeps across the United Kingdom. Police warn against road travel in many parts of the country, with a rare red weather warning issued. We'll bring you the latest as Storm Bert batters Britain. And Doogie Beatty, it has to be said. Then Donald Trump is reportedly considering sanctions on International Criminal Court officials after it issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. What do you think on that one? And Australia is pushing through with a ban on teenagers using social media. Do you think we should implement a similar scheme here in the United Kingdom? You and my panel will get your chance to have your say. I'm Darren Grimes, my friends, and this is The Weekend. Now, as you well know by now, this show is absolutely nothing without you and your views. One of them's just come in. Amanda says, I'm getting increasingly fed up with people like one of your guests who think it's okay to run down certain sectors of the population by using terminology like angry red face. I quite agree, to be perfectly honest with you. You wouldn't find that said about anyone else, would you? Now, let me know your thoughts on all of the other stories we'll be discussing and debating today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join that conversation there. Keeping me company this hour is the former Labour advisor and writer Scarlett Maguire and the novelist and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. But before we get stuck into today's stories, we're going to get you news with the marvellous Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Darren, and a very good afternoon to you. These are your latest stories. Some breaking news now. The Met Police has confirmed that a police cordon was put in place at Euston Station this afternoon while officers investigated a suspicious package. However, in the last few minutes, they've issued an update to say that a controlled explosion has been carried out and that the cordons have now been lifted. This news comes following the closure of Gatwick's South Terminal and a controlled explosion at the US Embassy yesterday. And another breaking news story from this hour. A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after one man has died and another was critically injured during a shooting in Birmingham. Police were called to Edgbaston at around 11 o'clock last night. One man in his 20s was found in a car but was pronounced dead at the scene. Another man in his 30s was found injured at a bus stop and was then taken for treatment at hospital. West Midlands Police now say a man in his 30s was arrested and remains in custody. We'll be bringing you more on that story as we get it. As Storm Bert continues to batter much of the UK, the Met Office has issued amber and yellow weather warnings, as well as 16 flood alerts being issued. This morning, winds of up to 68 miles per hour have been recorded and 13 centimetres of snow has fallen in some parts of the country. In Ireland, the Electricity Supply Board has said that high winds have caused power outages for around 60,000 customers. And in Lancashire, the championship game between Blackburn and Portsmouth has been postponed. Our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beatty, is in County Down for us today and has been urging people to take care.
Late last night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had snow. Now we've been battered by winds and really, really ice-cold rain. It's not sleet. The rain is just so freezing cold. And what's happened is the roads are now flooded, trees are down, and underneath that line, water is ice. So anybody that is out and about this morning, please, please be very, very careful.
Following a High Court ruling yesterday, Nikita Hand was awarded almost €250,000 in damages. That's after she accused MMA fighter Conor McGregor of raping her back in 2018. However, in response to the ruling, McGregor took to social media platform X to say the following: I'll be appealing today's decision. I'm with my family now, focused on my future. Thank you to all my support worldwide. Meanwhile, outside the court yesterday, Nikita spoke emotionally about wanting to be a story of hope for victims of sexual assault.
I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice.
Now, although the government has introduced proposals for stricter measures on antisocial behaviour, because of their devolved powers, Scotland would not be included. The Respect orders would clamp down on antisocial behaviour across the board. But one element people have expressed they're particularly pleased about is the new power to clamp down on e-bikes and e-scooters. In Glasgow, people have been asking if Scotland should now follow suit to tighten policing around this issue.
England are about to tie that in with their new ASBO type order, Respect orders. I think Scotland needs to have a look at how we're handling them.
Very much so, yeah. Because, as I say to you, especially the electric ones, because they can, a bit of speed, I just almost get bumped into just walking up there and now.
I'm an elderly person and I'm always scared, they could knock you down.
Exactly.
And they don't care.
They should stop at traffic lights because any other cyclists are giving them a bad name. And I friends had a couple of near misses with them as well, so.
Remember the old ASBOs? Well, do you think Scotland should do a wee rework as well?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the first grey seal pup of the season has been born at a former weapons testing site along the Suffolk coastline. The birth marks the 4th year in a row of seals breeding there. It began there following reduced visitor access during the pandemic. The National Trust has said that more than 130 seal pups were born there last year, with the breeding site now being described as a brilliant wildlife success story. Those are your latest headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper, and now it's back to Darren.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks very much, Sophie. Hey, she might be a reaper, but she's certainly not grim. Let's get stuck into today's topics. Storm Bert has hit the United Kingdom, with the Met Office warning of power outages and road closures across the country this weekend. Snow, rain and wind alerts are already in place, with 2 areas in Ireland facing a rare red warning for heavy rain. Well, joining me now is our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who I'm happy to say, if you've been watching the bulletins, you'll be worried about his welfare, but he is still alive and he is still with us. Doogie, you've still got that puddle in your background there. I mean, just how much of a problem is it becoming for those on the road?
Well, it is, because this is on a major road between Cumber and Dundonald. It takes the traffic right from Downpatrick right into Belfast, and being a Saturday you would think it wouldn't be that busy, but I've actually been surprised how much traffic is on it. But it is a very fast road, very, very fast, and the puddle itself is not the story. Really, if you're coming over the brow of this hill and you come across this and traffic's coming the other way and they don't see it as well, well, you will have quite a nasty collision on your hands. And you asked me earlier on about how well the government was prepared for this, etc. Well, storms at this time of year are not unusual, Darren. You know, I've been in agriculture most of my life, and you know, you expect this type of thing at this time of year. But the one big problem at this time of year, when you get high winds followed by rain, is, if I could just bend down here, is this: leaves off the trees blow everywhere, and especially in the gratings, manholes, gullies, drains, and they clog it up and they cause rivers to burst their banks. They cause quite a bit of disruption, I suppose, and that is the one thing about this storm. Now, it came to us at 3 o'clock this morning, driving snow, high winds. That snow turned to rain. The rain then washed away the snow, and it was still freezing temperatures, so the ice was packed on the road. And when the rain came down on top of it, as I was driving at 6 o'clock this morning in the darkness, you hit a flood, and all of a sudden it wasn't aquaplaning. I know the feeling of aquaplaning in a car, but it was actually skidding on what you would have supposed with the dry surface of the road, because any salt that had been put in that road was washed away. So this storm is now headed east towards yourselves. I've been talking to friends of mine in Annick, They're telling me that Blythe, Newcastle and Durham is quite heavily hit by snow. In fact, Newcastle Airport is saying some flights are delayed. And it's not so much the storm itself, it's things like this that we have to be very careful that come on the back of it. So Northern Ireland has recovered. The electricity service has been out fixing power lines that were taken down by trees. There's still quite a few thousand out in the Republic of Ireland, down near Cork and Galway, where the storm came off the Atlantic. But it has been such a strange storm. I mean, rain, wind, snow, all at once. It has been damaging, but luckily enough, the government here was well prepared for it. And maybe because it hasn't been on the back of loads of storms, they had the right manpower in the right place at the right time. But Northern Ireland is now watching what is happening in the rest of the UK.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Dougie, I am shocked and also grateful that there has been proper preparations put in place, because you hear so often, don't you, that flood defences and all these other things simply don't exist. And like, it's a surprise to us all that in November the weather can be bad.
Well, it's not really that much of a surprise. November, autumnal, storms are really quite common, but not with all three elements at once. You usually get a lot of flooding at this time of year. In fact, I remember, it must have been about 9 years ago, Northern Ireland froze for a total of 8 weeks. There was water mains burst everywhere. It's not unusual, but it isn't helpful to the public, and it's definitely not helpful to the farmers that are still trying to get the remainder of potato crops and so forth out of the fields. That's going to be a problem for them. And of course, when they go into those sodden fields and come out onto the public road, the water washes out with them, and so does a lot of the soil in the road, making driving conditions extremely slippy. So any warning I can give of this storm is, please don't think the storm's over and everything's okay. It's still, as you can see, not, and that's when you will make your biggest mistakes.
Yeah, great point there, Dougie, actually, on farming and agriculture, because they're really struggling this year thanks to a poor summer, and of course the winter before that being really pretty poor as well. But Dougie Beattie there, thank you for giving that update from NI, always love it. Now, recession fears, my friends, are growing after new data showed that business activity in the UK shrunk for the first time since Liz Truss's mini-budget. Well, private businesses named and shamed the new national insurance contribution policy as the primary factor behind their reduced activity. But the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has reiterated her claim that the budget provides stable foundations for growth. Joining us is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Stable foundations for growth, what's that in Rachel Reeves's CV, perhaps, Olivia? But who knows? I mean, Olivia, the point of the matter is, here, we've been discussing farmers a lot this week, rightly so, but the fact of the matter is that small to medium-sized businesses, even big businesses, they're going to be seriously hit by the NI increase on employers, and that's going to have a detrimental impact to the economy that we're seeing feeding through to these predictions in economic growth in the future.
Well, absolutely. What economists are talking about today is mainly that hike to national insurance for employers. Now, during the general election campaign, Labour said that they wouldn't be raising taxes on working people. Over the campaign, they didn't actually define what that meant. Afterwards, it became clear that what it meant was very specifically they wouldn't be raising taxes on income tax, VAT or national insurance contributions for employees. But they found a loophole in their own rules, and in the last budget, Rachel Reeves said that from April 2025, she would be raising national insurance contributions for employers. Now, that has a lot of knock-on effects. One of those, of course, is on individuals at home. Yes, they're not having to contribute more NI themselves, but their employers, especially employers who work in industries with quite fine margins, so retail, for example, where people on the shop floor are often paid the minimum wage, or in care homes, they don't have the money to be able to raise that national insurance for their employees. So what they're doing instead is refusing to give pay cuts to their employees, employees, which obviously has an effect on the family budget, or in some cases, they're actually firing swathes of employees. That's having an effect on individual households. We are beginning to see unemployment tick up, but also it's having an effect, as we've seen this morning, on the economy as a whole. The private sector is now at its smallest for 13 months. We're also seeing effects similar to what we saw around Liz Truss's mini budget. So the pound is now at a pretty bad low against the dollar.
Yeah.
Rachel Reeves has argued and will continue to argue that the reason that she's imposed these tax hikes is because she believes that without those tax hikes, without filling that £40 billion black hole that she talks about, there is no way that the country can achieve growth. Essentially what she's saying is we need to do this now. That will set the foundations, and then the Labour Party can concentrate on growth. Some economists think differently and think that if you raise these taxes on businesses, forcing businesses to either fire people or not to hire so many people, then you'll see a sort of contraction in the economy, which will be very, very difficult to fix later on.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like standing in a bucket and expecting it to be able to move, isn't it? Trying to move yourself whilst doing it. Taxes do not create growth, in my opinion. But Olivia, thank you very much for that analysis. Always brilliant. Now, we're going to see what my panel make of this. We've got the former Labour advisor and writer, Scarlett Maguire, and the novelist and psychotherapist, Lucy Beresford. Thank you very much to both of you for your company. Scarlett, I'll start with you for the Labour line. Do you actually think that this... do you potentially think Rachel's looking at this and thinking, oh, maybe we have gone a bit too far?
No, I think she had a real problem. I think, what do you...
Oh, you do? I wasn't expecting you to say that.
No, I think she faced a real problem. She faced a real problem because she walked in there and actually, business doesn't work without a good health service and a good education and good other public sector, all of which were creaking, and there was no way that she was going to raise income tax. I mean, you say, taxes don't help growth, but actually, without taxes, you can't build the public sector. We knew it was going to be a bad budget. I don't know how many times I've been on GB News before the budget saying, yes, I think it's going to be really, really tough. I think it's going to hit people hard, right? I think it was a brave budget. And what she's saying is, if I do it now, we've then got 5 years to build on it.
I mean, Lucy, I would agree it was a brave budget, but I don't mean that as a compliment.
Exactly. Brave or foolhardy. I think the colours were nailed to the mast very early on before the budget, when the first, in a way, financial gesture that the Labour Party issued was to give public sector workers a really big pay rise. So that set the scene. So it wasn't just about the legacy that they keep talking about from the 14 years of the Conservative government. So you have a political dimension to this, which is the choices that the government has made, and also arguably a political calculation, which is, yes, we'll do the really, really difficult stuff now, because in 5 years' time, people won't remember this. But we are 3 weeks later from a budget still talking about it. And that just shows how it's landing so badly. And today's argument is about the fact that business is giving it the thumbs down, that actually you can't have growth without supporting the smaller businesses. The people that run hairdressing salons, the people that run the care homes, but also GP surgeries. GP surgeries are now saying, well, we can't afford to employ that extra receptionist that we thought we were going to be able to have because we can't afford the national insurance contributions. And when you've got really big retailers who you would imagine have the financial muscle to be able to withstand most economic shocks, particularly in the run-up to Christmas, this is their harvest time. If people like Tesco and Morrison's are saying, we too are going to really struggle because we can't afford, without putting the extra cost out onto the food prices on the shop floor, which again is going to affect the average consumer, if they're coming out and saying that this budget is really anti-growth, then as a government, I think you've got to worry.
And Scarlett, I mean, mentioned there the supermarkets. It's often said that they make these vast profits and all the rest of it, but actually when you look at the overhead heads, the margins on these things aren't actually massive in and of themselves.
No, I think a few £1 million is quite a profit. I mean, look, I think the problem Rachel had. I mean, you talk about public sector payments. I mean, we had a problem with the nurses, we had a problem with the junior doctors, we had a problem with the teachers.
Train drivers.
They
got a massive
train drivers, but actually, what to not do anything. So one of the reasons the NHS is so terrible is because we had junior doctor strikes. So it's not like the strikes were meaningless and the morale. Now we know we have to transform the health service. Wes Streeting talks about it all the time. We can't do it with low morale.
I just read Gordon Brown's piece. Did you read that, Scott?
Yeah, about his
little girl.
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought it was a very beautiful piece. But he was talking about palliative care in the NHS and how the NHS is at its lowest ebb. Now, that's with record sums of investment. We talk often about £350 million a week.
And I think
that's gone in.
I go back to my point about the fact that the government has made choices. The government has said, we have got money to fund some of these pay rises. And one might argue, yeah, doctors, nurses, absolutely. Train drivers, many of whom were on over £70,000 to begin with, they did not necessarily need to be prioritised in this way. This is the point.
And when train drivers go on strike,
the government is saying we have to make hard choices. We are going to choose to give these people more money.
Lucy,
and to be fair, in my view, they should have done it the other way around. You should have had a budget first and then work out what money is left and then see who's going to get those pay rises.
When train drivers go on strike, the country goes to a halt. There is no question.
Well, we know that didn't happen because now we have a very different way of working. It's called working from home, and there are more and more people who are making that choice.
I have also actually been on this programme over and over again saying there's nothing wrong with it, whereas the whole of GB News thinks that everybody should go into work all the time. You can't have it both ways. The train drivers...
Good job we're here right now.
The train drivers...
I got here, Scarlett. The trains, I think this morning would have been off, but not because of the train drivers.
Yes, to be fair, that's because of the weather. Yes, absolutely.
On the line.
And I managed to get in from Tufnell Park in spite of the fact, as I said to Lucy when we were off air, there were branches being pulled. I mean, what is going to happen to London? I mean, I dread seeing what's happening to
Scotland, isn't it?
That point there that's raised by Lucy, there's a perception here that the public sector, as long as you've got a powerful trade union representing you, Labour will look after you. If you don't have that...
If you're a pensioner, if you are a pensioner,
a small
you are going to be screwed. Yeah. It is a really, really sour choice.
Lucy, we have the triple lock for pensioners, right? There is no question that pensions are going up again in April. I think, if you want the truth, I think that actually the pensions wasn't done very well. I think what's really good about it is the number of poor pensioners who are now getting pension credit, which is a lot more than their 300 quid.
Not enough are signed up to it that there can be because the form is so old.
The form has 243
I know.
questions
and
on it.
Age concern, can I say to anybody, as I have said on this programme a number of times, anybody, any pensioner having problems needs to go to Age Concern or Citizens Advice, who will help them fill out the form.
It's a situation that you're making pensioners jump through more hoops in order to get the money that they really deserve.
But on that point, you know, Age UK call jams on the getting through on the phones, so it's a sign that there's a real urge and a real problem there. But Scarlett Maguire and Lucy Barris, thank you very much for that. We'll come back to them just in a moment's time. Now, for all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, you can go to our website. We're at gbnews.com. Now, my friends, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Lots more coming up on the show. Donald Trump is reportedly considering sanctions on the International Criminal Court after it issued an arrest warrant for Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. What do you make of that one? There's different views coming into the inbox. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Phil Kearsey is bringing a new flavour to the Michelin-starred restaurant Pied à Terre as he becomes its new executive head chef. Customers can expect a menu that showcases modern British cooking, accompanied by classical French roots, which uses hyper-seasonal ingredients. What are hyper-seasonal ingredients? That's an interesting phrase.
It's more about just reacting to the seasonality of everything. We like to change the menu all the time. So basically, I surround myself with the best suppliers, and they tell me what's amazing at the moment, and then we try and celebrate that in the restaurant in many different forms, using taste, texture, and technique, and just try and celebrate something as humble as a broccoli stem or a cauliflower, using absolutely everything, and making sure we've got an ever-changing menu. So letting the seasons dictate, so it's never boring and we never get menu fatigue.
OK, your career has taken you around the world a bit.
Yeah.
For example, you were in the United States. What did you learn there?
So, well, every chef I've worked for, it's about to take something from. A lot of chefs will go places and just stay in one establishment and get to the top, and then that's it. I've kind of then went to another chef to learn completely different things. That's the brilliant thing, to be able to surround myself with such amazing chefs throughout my career, because I've learned different things from all of them. And you find out 5 different ways to do something, and you find the way that you like it the best. And it's also about understanding it takes a while to understand how the restaurant is, going through the history of all these amazing chefs that have been before me, the style, because it needs to make sense. You wouldn't have a dish that should be at the Fat Duck and then a dish that should be at the Waterside, you know. You need to make sure that it all makes sense and it goes together with the decor, the service, the wine serving. And so we want to be the restaurant, not that does a little bit of everything, we want to be the best French restaurant in London, you know.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Weekend with me, Darren Grimes. On that story we had earlier, Tricia says, I want to hear Labour saying we had to make tough choices with regards to housing asylum seekers and foreign aid for a change, not pensioners. Good point, Tricia. Well, the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu is dividing opinion amongst Israel's allies on whether they'd abide by the court's order. The government has said, that's our government, has said it backs the warrants, but it's not stated whether they would arrest Israel's Prime Minister should he visit our shores. Elsewhere, Hungary and Viktor Orban and the USA, of course, soon to have President-elect Trump, have said that they reject the court's decision, while Canada and France have confirmed that Netanyahu would be detained if he visited their territory. So has the warrant done more damage than good? Well, let's see what my panel make of this. I've got Scarlett and Lucy with me still right now. Scarlett, I want to start with you then, because you are in sort of lockstep with France and Canada on this.
Well, I mean, there are 124 countries that make up the International Criminal Court, and all of those, so that's France, Canada, and we are one of them, say that we do it. And we have to remember, I mean, this isn't a special case. I mean, Putin has got an arrest warrant out for him.
You wouldn't seriously compare Putin.
No. But what I'm saying is the International Criminal Court actually looks at what people do, right? And actually, what the reason they've gone for Netanyahu and the man who was Defence Secretary but has been sacked, Yoav Gallant, is that they both said it's about aid. It's not actually about how many Palestinians they've killed in Gaza. It's that they made a conscious decision to stop aid getting through, and that is against humanitarian law. And so, therefore, Britain has to, as a member of the International Criminal Court, has to abide by it. And that's what Keir Starmer has said.
I mean, Lucy, the UNRWA, the UN, the body that represents Palestine, which, you know, seems to me to be more packed to the rafters with members of Hamas than anything else, or at least that's what was exposed in the not-too-distant past. But there's a real concern here that actually they can't get aid in because there are gangs that are attacking the convoys travelling through with aid, and also that, you know, Hamas is very much still operating within Gaza itself. Israel can't, in my opinion, can't seem to catch a break here, despite the fact that when you consider the stats around urban warfare, the death to bomb and bullet ratio is actually pretty low by international standards.
Well, it's around about 1, whereas internationally it's usually about 9.
Exactly.
So there's a huge difference. I mean, I personally feel that Keir Starmer is showing the most horrendous lack of leadership here, that actually what we're seeing, and of course the country you're not mentioning, people might have issues around Hungary wanting to maybe go against the ICC ruling. But if you've got a country like Germany that has its own history of dealing with genocide, if they're the ones that are saying actually they're not going to abide by the ICC ruling, I think it just shows how out of lockstep Keir Starmer runs the risk of being. And in fact, if you go to Humanitarian Aid Gaza, they show that over 1.1 million tonnes of aid have been delivered into Gaza by Israel since October 2023. And nearly 80% of that was food. So this whole idea that there is food scarcity and that starvation is being used as a weapon of war is simply being debunked at the moment. And what we need now is someone not necessarily of Trump's standing, because he does divide opinion, but the idea that he's prepared to stand up to the ICC, which I personally feel has lost all credibility in this. The idea that they were started with very, very good, noble aims, but what you've got is you are creating a situation where, whether they intended this or not, they are saying there is a moral equivalence between Benjamin Netanyahu and the leader of Hamas, who, let's face it, has actually been declared by Hamas as having been dead for at least a month or two. So it's almost as if he's just been put on that list to show willing. So the idea that Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to protect his citizens, even people in Israel who actually have begun to turn against Netanyahu, have now swung back thinking, actually, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Them against the world, it seems to be.
Yeah,
and 'twas ever thus.
We've got to move on, Scarlett, sorry.
Well, I just want to say on aid, right, Lucy might say one thing, but all the stats from the aid agencies say there is not enough. People are starving and they're very, very worried. And we're just going through
quite a lot of those aid agencies have their own boundaries in place around what their staff are prepared to, the hours they're prepared to work and the situations in where to work. And they're not receiving the aid.
Aid workers are being killed by Israeli soldiers.
All right, you're with me, Darren Grimes, our friends, on GB News. We've got lots more coming up. First of all, though, we're going to get you news with Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Darren. The time is just after 1:30, and these are your latest GB News headlines. A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after one man has died and another was critically injured during a shooting in Birmingham. Police were called to Edgbaston at around 11 o'clock last night. One man in his 20s was found in a car but was pronounced dead at the scene. Another man in his 30s was found injured at a bus stop and was then taken for treatment at hospital. West Midlands Police now say a man in his 30s was arrested and remains in custody. Elsewhere, as Storm Bert continues to batter much of the UK, the Met Office has issued amber and yellow weather warnings, as well as 16 flood alerts being issued. This morning, winds of up to 68 miles per hour have been recorded and 13 centimetres of snow has fallen in some parts of the country. In Ireland, the Electricity Supply Board has said that high winds have caused power outages. That's for around 60,000 customers. And in Lancashire, the championship game between Blackburn and Portsmouth has been postponed. Our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, is in County Down for us today and has been urging anyone out and about to take care.
Late last night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had snow. Now we've been battered by winds and really, really ice-cold rain. It's not sleet. The rain is just so freezing cold. And what's happened is the roads are now flooded, trees are down, and underneath that line water is ice. So anybody that is out and about this morning, please, please be very, very careful.
In royal news, the Princess of Wales has invited the child survivors of the Southport attack to her annual Christmas concert. It comes after the Princess made a surprise visit with her husband William to meet the bereaved families of the victims in Southport last month. The Princess has set her sights on being able to stage the Together at Christmas service this year, despite the health challenges that she has faced. Zayn Malik will begin his nationwide tour today, with this being his first performance since the funeral of her former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne that took place earlier this week. Held in Buckinghamshire, Zayn attended the funeral on Wednesday alongside other former band members Harry Styles, Niall Horan and Louis Tomlinson. Zayn's tour was scheduled to kick off in Edinburgh on the day of Liam's funeral, but the date was moved as a result. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers, Sophie. Now remember, my friends, you can let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we've been discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. One of you's just written in to say, it's so nice seeing Dawn Neeson in the studio. She always looks so well put together, which is lovely to see.
Well, Dawn, I'm sorry.
Today I am channeling
I mean, Dawn is beautiful, but yeah.
No, Dawn is beautiful and lovely, but I obviously have a problem here.
Anyway, lots of coming up on today's show. Storm Bert has hit the UK with snow closing roads and strong rains and winds expected to cause further travel disruption and potential flooding. We'll bring you the latest as Storm Bert batters Britain. All of that and more to come with me, Dawn Neeson. And you're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. There is a lot going on this weekend. Storm Bert bringing heavy snow, outbreaks of rain, strong winds as well. There will be disruption through the rest of Saturday and Sunday as well. We can see it nicely on the pressure pattern. Storm Bert sat to the northwest of the UK. Isobars tightly packed together, indicating strong winds as well. And overnight, we've seen heavy rain push north and eastwards, bumping into cold air. Temperatures down to -12 last night in across parts of Scotland, so we've seen heavy snow. However, this is turning back to rain through the rest of the day for much of the country. An amber warning out across Scotland till the mid-afternoon period for snow and ice. Windy for everyone, gusts 60, 70 miles an hour around the coast, but turning incredibly mild, 16, 17 Celsius across the south. Further heavy rain pushing northwards as we go through the evening time. But let's look at that in more detail. We can see the snow starting to ease across Scotland, still temperatures barely above freezing. Outbreaks of rain around the coast, cloudy with further outbreaks of rain Northern Ireland and Northern England as well. Snow melting here leading to some localised flooding. Localised flooding across parts of England and Wales, particularly in the west, with some heavy outbreaks of rain and strong winds too. And very little changes as we move through the evening and overnight. Further outbreaks of heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, particularly across parts of England and Wales. It stays windy as well, again around the west and along the south coast as well. Gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour or so. An incredibly mild night, temperatures 15 Celsius in one or two spots. Generally most places in double figures to start Sunday, but it won't feel that mild out there. Strong winds, outbreaks of rain across England and Wales. Something a little brighter, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, blustery showers here. The wind's picking up again as the centre of the low pushes a little closer through the day. Further rain just continues across England and Wales. Met Office warnings remain in force for wind and rain through the day. See you soon.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home? Talking about. Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry, Tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Now, Storm Bert has begun to descend on the UK with Met Office warning of power outages and road closures across the country this weekend. Snow, rain and wind alerts are already in place, with 2 areas in Ireland facing a rare red warning for heavy rain. Well, joining me now is our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who has thus far been battered more than a sausage in a chip shop. But Doogie Beattie, where are you at now then? Where are your travels taking you?
Well, I've came up the road from Cumber to the little town of Dundonald, which is basically outside Belfast. And as you can see behind me, the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service are quite busy because we talked about those leaves coming off trees and blocking gullies because it was this time of year. Well, just beyond us there, you'd see the firemen walking towards us. There's loads and loads of trees, and they, of course, lost their leaves last night in the storm, washed into the gullies with the rain, and this entire road is flooded. You just see one car there beyond the cordon. That car is a beautiful Mercedes, and well, it was flooded out, and beyond that is another very nice Golf. But more importantly, there is houses down here to the left hand side of me that have all taken water in. That is flood damage by Storm Bert that has came in, and it has really tortured some of these places with these leaves that we've been talking about coming off the trees when you get that high wind and rain together. But Ireland has took a massive hit this morning in South Cork, in Galway, on the west of Ireland, and that storm moved northwards about 3 o'clock in the morning, turned to heavy snow, then turned to rain. The rain, of course, washed away the snow, but the roads were still packed with ice. And what we're now seeing in and around the province is trees being cleared up, power lines that are down, and unfortunately, rather unfortunately, heartbreak for people just a few weeks out from Christmas that their homes have been flooded, and some beautiful vehicles that are sitting here have also been flooded out. So yeah, it's not great, but the storm, I am told, has hit places like Newcastle, Blyth and Durham, bringing snow in with it, creating delays in Newcastle Airport, and really yous will have this to cope with very, very shortly, because the temperature is actually warming up again. About an hour ago it got very cold, but then it started to warm up again. It is really 4 seasons in one day, and it's creating problems for everybody that is in a low-lying area with trees out around it.
I mean, Doogie, is there a way for people in the houses behind you and other parts of County Down, etc., like it, how easily are they able to access support, for example?
Well, unfortunately, most of these houses will not be housing executive or council houses. Most of these houses here are private housing, and I can tell you from being the victim of a storm myself where I lost part of a roof, nobody comes out and fixes it for you. You've got to go through your insurance, you've got to be rehoused. I mean, a lot of these houses here will have no electricity in them because the waters went into them, and it could well be 6 or 8 weeks before dehumidifiers, etc., are put in there and electricians clear it, to go again, that it's good to switch the power back on. So these people will be having a somewhat different Christmas from us. Definitely not be in their own houses, that's for sure. And really, it's the damage that's done to houses. It's not replacing goods. It's goods that cannot be replaced. Personal items, photographs, etc. Those are the things that you really worry about after a storm has come, and anybody that has been flooded will know exactly that. It's not till later on you look at it and think, where did that go? And it was soaked, you know, pictures of family members, etc. And yes, Northern Ireland is in for a bit of an insurance claim over the next couple of days.
All right, Doogie Beattie, thank you very much for that report there from NI by our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who's getting a lot of love, it has to be said, in the comments, and deservedly so. He's earned his keep today, shall we say. Right, folks, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Lots more coming up. We're going to be discussing Australia. They're pushing through a ban on teenagers using social media. Do you think we should implement a similar scheme here in the United Kingdom? Is it even remotely viable? That's what I want to explore. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
Friday night live with Mark Dolan from 8 p.m.
You know, whenever I want to have a laugh, I will fire up a Ricky Gervais special on Netflix. He's funny, isn't he? Very politically incorrect. I might watch a vintage episode of Fawlty Towers if it hasn't been cancelled. Or I could just read up on the latest musings from the Welsh Labour government. And this week they have waged war on the countryside, which is apparently unwelcoming to British people of colour. Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, those racial checkpoints in the Wye Valley are completely unacceptable. And the snowy bits of Mount Snowdon scream white privilege. Can you believe this story? It's proof, if you needed it, that Welsh Labour are barking mad and talking a load of shih tzu.
I think what's so interesting about this, I mean, this is an absurd question. This is ridiculous. Obviously, dogs and the countryside are not inherently racist. I think this entire connection between what is effective cultural Marxism in addition to what is effective socialism that is at the heart of Welsh Labour and many other hard left groups in the United Kingdom.
I got to do a correction.
Go
because
on.
It's not Welsh Labour. It was one little thinky-tanky that did some research. I know it was taxpayer funded, but it was just a suggestion. Welsh Labour have not gone, yes, that's a good idea. This research, which I wholly agree is quite absurd, was done by interviewing the 4% ethnic minorities of Wales, and they came out with the fact that they don't feel welcome in green spaces because there are so many dogs, and that's how this was born. I mean, I don't know whether that makes it make any more sense.
And the fact that taxpayers are footing the bill for research like this is the real scandal. We had this earlier conversation about the National Health Service, where all of our money is going and being wasted, and it is also being wasted on absolute nonsense like this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Thank you very much for your company. Hey, lots of you getting in touch here. A lot of people animated about the Israel question and whether or not the ICC are right to pursue Prime Minister Netanyahu. Kez says the arrest warrant for Netanyahu is political, based on propaganda from Hamas, as the world media can't get into Gaza to report the truth. Some other comments, some people very supportive of the ICC getting involved with that. And Mark reminds us that last year, Starmer said that he agreed with Israel's right to cut off access to electricity and all the rest of it. But he says, how come now he's changed his mind? He says, yet again, he's influenced by his party and some of his electoral base. So, well...
Actually, he apologised for that and said he was wrong and that he was answering another question. It's really important that he rode back from that pretty fast. And he should never have said that as a human...
Where is this man's principles? When is he ever going to actually say something and then follow it through and stand by it from one year to the next?
The problem was that he got in a muddle and he answered one question that had come up.
That's communications.
No. He is
like a leaf in storm burst.
He is a human rights lawyer, and he knew that he was absolutely wrong to say that, and you cannot use...
All right. I've got Scarlett, obviously. I've got Scarlett, who's still in with me. And we're going to talk about this story. Australia's Prime Minister has come under fire from tech companies for continuing to push for a ban on under-16s being able to access social media. The government, however, is relying on the social media apps to actually enforce the policy, meaning that each app will be forced to implement their own age verification software for new users. So is this a nanny state gone mad, or the first important step in protecting children from online dangers? Let's see what my panel make of this. Now, Lisa, I'll start with you because, first of all, my first instinct, putting the impact it has on kids to one side, which I think is real and present, I worry that you wouldn't any longer have anonymous whistleblowers using social media to blow the whistle, as it were, because of the fact they may have to... If all of social media now relies on age verification, putting in your identification, you identify who you are to authorities and all the rest of it in order to use these social media platforms. So anonymity is totally gone, and I'm worried that we're moving in that direction on social media. So are we throwing the privacy baby out with the safeguarding children bathwater?
We may be, and to me that's a good thing. That actually I don't think anonymity is really important in that regard. And there are plenty of other forums through which you can blow the whistle and maintain your anonymity. You don't have to necessarily do it through the social media platforms. There are charities, for example, that are working really hard to do that. The most important thing is that we haven't really grasped this nettle of how social media affects the brains of our developing adolescents and our children, because scarily there are children as in primary school who have mobile phones now because their parents are worried that they might go missing. So what we need to make sure that our children whose brains are developing in such a way that they don't have good impulse control, they haven't got good forward thinking about the actions that they're carrying out when they're as an adolescent. And so we've actually got to take that danger away from them. So I'm fully behind this government in Australia who are saying that actually it should be down to the social media tech companies. And what is the regulation going to be around that? Will we kind of fine them and hit them in their pocket, which is arguably the only language that they understand? Whereas at the moment, it's very much around the children themselves or their, dare I say it, tech hapless parents having to try to work out what sites their children are going onto. Far better that you have a ruling at a government level that says this is really important for our children's mental health.
I mean, Scarlett, the point will be how do you actually enforce this? I know Lucy says through fines. But these, kids today, they're quite tech savvy, right? They can get around these things, these rules and all the rest of it. There are going to be ways to, like using VPNs, for example, where you can say you're in another country when actually you're in Australia and bypass it that way. It's not beyond them.
It's up to the tech companies, isn't it? That's what's so interesting about what Australia's doing, is instead of saying, we're going to do this, and for people like you quite rightly saying, but kids can get around it, what they're saying to the tech companies is, you are making a small or a large fortune, millions and millions of pounds. You're like a national state, and you have to take responsibility for it, and you have to decide how to do it. And that's what's so interesting about what Australia's doing, is they're saying, you've got a year, you come up with the apps that work, right? And it's your responsibility. And they're very brave. They're very brave because the Americans, I mean, particularly now that we've got Elon Musk so close to Trump, are going, oh, no, you leave our people alone. And actually the Australians are going, no, we're protecting our our children, and it's your responsibility.
Somehow we've got to get back to the world where children are allowed to have a childhood.
I want to pose a question, just really important to our audience. Would you like to see the same thing imposed in the United Kingdom?
I'd like to see a ban on children having mobile phones under the age of 16, full stop. But then I'm the kind of person that wants to raise everything. Absolutely. We don't need them. You just don't need to give your children this technology. It's too distracting. It creates an environment where you have a distraction in your life and you're not focused. And that is actually affecting the brains of our adolescents.
Yes or no? We've got to go to a break. Yes.
I think we should we should only have those sort of non-smartphones.
Thank you very much to my panel there. That was Scarlett Maguire and it was Lucy Beresford before that. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Loads more coming up on the show. First of all, here's your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Over the rest of the weekend, Storm Bert continues to bring some wet and windy weather for many of us and turning increasingly mild as well. Temperatures going from well below average to well above average over the next 24 hours. We can see that on the latest chart. Storm Bert just sat to the northwest with its centre, but outbreaks of rain across much of the country. Snow melt across northern England, Scotland as well, as that mild air continues to stream northwards. The rain particularly heavy across parts of England and Wales, northwest England, Wales, the West Country. Rainfall totals really building, some localised flooding. Exceptionally mild across England and Wales, temperatures 13, 14, 15 Celsius above where they should be during the day for this time of year. Sunday itself, a wet start across England and Wales. Outbreaks of heavy rain, some tricky travelling conditions first thing, some localised flooding, particularly across western parts, a mild start too. Brighter for Northern Ireland, Scotland, with some sunny spells but blustery showers. The wind starting to pick up across the northwest of Scotland too, as the centre of the low edges a little nearer. Mild as well, temperatures starting to reach double figures after a cold few days across Scotland. Through the day on Sunday, rain continues across parts of the Midlands, southwest England, and stretching across towards the Wash as well. To the southeast of this, some brighter spells, largely cloudy to the north across Wales and northern England, with some showers, blustery showers, Northern Ireland and Scotland too. Some longer spells of rain and wind gusts still 50, 60 miles an hour or so. So there will be some disruption through the day on Sunday. Into the evening time, this rain just continues to push its way eastwards, bringing rain into southeast England, later blustery showers elsewhere. And it stays unsettled as we move through next week as well. Further sunny spells and heavy rain at times too. See you again soon.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock on Saturday the 23rd of November. This is The Weekend on GB News. Now, stock up on food and water as Storm Bert sweeps across the United Kingdom. Police warn against road travel in many parts of the country, with a rare red weather warning issued. We'll bring you the latest as Storm Bert batters Britain. Then, more revelations over Rachel Reeves' CV have come to light as it's been revealed that her real job was in customer relations rather than an economist at Halifax. I am leaving the studio after this show to start my job as an eye surgeon, my friends. But isn't it everyone a little over-generous on their CV? Do you think this is actually a problem? Let me know. And did you know that supporting Brexit is not protected from workplace discrimination under equality law, as a Eurosceptic councillor lost her claim that she was bullied and harassed by her employer due to her anti-EU views? Do you think that political beliefs should be protected, especially in this age? I'm Darren Grimes, and this is The Weekend. But hey, as you well know by now, this show is absolutely nothing without you and your views. Let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we'll be discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation there. Well, keeping me company this hour is the contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker, and the former Conservative Special Advisor, Charlie Rowley, who I'm delighted to say has turned up.
I wouldn't miss it for you.
But before we get stuck into today, he was blown away by Bert. But before we get stuck into today's stories, here's the news with Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Darren. The time is 2 minutes past 2, and these are your latest headlines. A man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after one man has died and another was critically injured during a shooting in Birmingham. Police were called to Edgbaston at around 11 o'clock last night. One man in his 20s was found in a car but was pronounced dead at the scene. Another man in his 30s was found injured at a bus stop and was then taken for treatment at a hospital. West Midlands Police now say a man in his 30s was arrested and remains in custody. Elsewhere, as Storm Bert continues to batter much of the UK, the Met Office has issued amber and yellow weather warnings, as well as 16 flood alerts being issued. This morning, winds of up to 68 miles per hour have been recorded and 13 centimetres of snow has fallen in some parts of the country. In Ireland, the Electricity Supply Board has said that high winds have caused power outages. That's for around 60,000 customers. And in Lancashire, the championship game between Blackburn and Portsmouth is just one of the games to be postponed. Our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie is in County Down for us today and has been urging people to take care.
Late last night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had snow. Now we've been battered by winds and really, really ice cold rain. It's not sleet. The rain is just so freezing cold. And what's happened is the roads are now flooded, trees are down, and underneath that line water is ice. So anybody that is out and about this morning, please, please be very, very careful.
The King attended the annual Royal Variety performance last night, although he was forced to go alone after the Queen had to miss it due to her ill health. King Charles accepted flowers on the Queen's behalf, as following a recent chest infection, Queen Camilla had to pull out last minute. A royal source has said that the Queen was naturally disappointed at having to miss the event. And in other royal news, the Princess of Wales has invited the child survivors of the Southport attack to her annual Christmas concert. It comes after the Princess made a surprise visit with her husband William to meet the bereaved families of the victims in Southport last month. The Princess has set her sights on being able to stage the Together at Christmas service this year. That's despite the health challenges that she's faced. The Met Police has confirmed that a police cordon was put in place at Euston Station this afternoon while officers investigated a suspicious package. However, they later confirmed that a controlled explosion had been carried out and that cordons were then lifted. This news comes following the closure of Gatwick's South Terminal and a controlled explosion at the US Embassy yesterday. And although the government has introduced proposals for stricter measures on antisocial behaviour, because of their devolved powers, Scotland would not be included. The respect orders would clamp down on antisocial behaviour across the board, but one element people have expressed they're particularly pleased about is the new power to clamp down on e-bikes and e-scooters. In Glasgow, people have been asking if Scotland should now follow suit to tighten policing around this issue.
England are about to tie that in with their new ASBO type order, respect orders. Do you think Scotland needs to have a look at how we're handling them?
Very much so, yeah. Because, as I say to you, especially the electric ones, because they can, a bit of speed, I just almost get bumped into just walking up there and now.
I'm an elderly person and I'm always scared, you know, they could knock you down.
Exactly.
And they don't care.
They should stop at traffic lights because any other cyclists are giving them a bad name. And my friends had a couple of near misses with them as well, so.
Remember the old ASBOs? Well, do you think Scotland should do a wee rework as well?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the first grey seal pup of the season has been born at a former weapons testing site along the Suffolk coastline. The birth marks the 4th year in a row of seals breeding there. It began following reduced visitor access during the pandemic. The National Trust has said that more than 130 seal pups were born there last year, with the breeding site now being described as a brilliant wildlife success story. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. It's back to Darren.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophie. We're going to get stuck into today's topics now. Now, Storm Bert has continued to batter the UK, with the Met Office warning of power outages and road closures across the country this weekend. Snow, rain and wind alerts are already in place, with 2 areas in Ireland facing a rare red warning for heavy rain. Well, joining me now is our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who isn't as worse for wear as he was earlier. Doogie, I hear you're making friends on the grapevine.
I am indeed, and I'm here at this flood, and it's actually caught a lot of houses in this flood, a lot of cars. There you can see the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service over my shoulder pumping that water out. But joining me now is Joanne Bunting. Joanne, you are the local MLA for this. Tell us how many people are in there.
Well, there's about 15 houses in this street, Dougie. We have a mixture of elderly residents, young babies. We have a woman who's just recently had a transplant. There are animals in these houses and their homes are devastated, their cars are devastated, and at this stage even one family has a fridge floating in their kitchen.
What sort of help is available for them?
Well, at present, I want all credit to the Fire and Rescue Service. They've been immense and they've been here from this morning. The water levels were extremely high. It's still extremely high and there's a long way to go. At present we've got the Red Cross on site, the council is here and the housing executive is en route so that we can establish emergency accommodation for these families.
An emergency accommodation, just talking of that, how hard will it be to get emergency accommodation in this area of Belfast?
Well, at this point, the local church is going to stay open overnight. The local Orange Hall is also open to afford people some facilities in the interim period. The problem is going to be long term. The housing waiting lists are extremely high as it is, but accommodation is going to have to be found for these people because this is going to be a long-term issue. So now we need all of the agencies to step up and we need the executive to step up and give us some help in this area. It's been a long-going campaign over flooding in this area. And there have been many warnings. There's been a lot of lobbying from residents and ourselves as elected reps, but now's the time for action. I don't know how much more needs to happen here before proper action and restorative action will be taken.
So there you go. You can see what the frustration there in the local politicians here with wanting something done about this, because of course this was a huge amount of rain and snow late last night that caused the rivers to flood, the waterways to be overtaken by the amount of water that was there, and of course the leaves coming off the trees. So as I said earlier on, the storm might well have passed Northern Ireland, but you can see the devastation that's left behind.
Yes, I mean, Doogie, one of our viewers says, hats off to Doogie. I hope he's not blown away for going above and beyond reporting on Storm Bert. Now it's time to get yourself in front of a warm fire for a wee dram. Well, Doogie, before you do that, I mean, you might be going off for a little drinky poo with that MLA there, but I'm wondering, to what extent are Stormont doing enough here? When will they convene to you know, get round the table and make sure there's action here?
Well, they will meet on Monday as usual, but as you heard Joanne saying there, they have been really lobbying about the water systems in this place and how much they needed improved over the last few years. And a lot of that's to do with, well, the expansion, building more homes being built, etc. And this is the old part of the village of Dundonald. So you can imagine that it has took the most of the stress of that water that's coming in as it's being connected to new buildings throughout the village. So it really has to be looked at now, and these people really, really have to be housed. They're going to be out over Christmas. It is families that are pretty much shaken up and well, I'll have to start all over again.
All right, Doogie Beattie, thank you very much for that update on Bert in Northern Ireland. Now, recession fears are growing after new data has shown that business activity in the United Kingdom shrunk for the first time since Liz Truss's mini-budget. Where are the howls? Where's the condemnation? Private businesses have named and shamed the new national insurance contribution policy as the primary factor behind their reduced activity. But the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has reiterated her claim that the budget provides stable foundations for growth. Well, joining us now is political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, I don't know about you, but judging by the current government's nosedive in the polls, I would say that the stable foundation is about as stable as one of those trees post-Storm Bert.
Well, we will have to wait and see for what the full effects of this budget will be. But the news today is probably worrying the Treasury and Rachel Reeves in particular. Rachel Reeves's budget was based on the premise that unless you fill that black hole that she claims is in public finances, she claims there's a £40 billion black hole left by the Tories in public finances. Until you do that, you just cannot lay the foundations for growth. You have to get that sorted before you start on growth policies. But there are plenty of economists who disagree. And actually, it is looking now as though that policy that Rachel Reeves imposed in the budget to raise national insurance on employers could end up with a lot of knock-on effects in the economy, most of them pretty undesirable. That increase in national insurance for employers was basically a loophole that the Chancellor found in her own rules. Over the general election campaign, she said that Labour wouldn't raise taxes on working people. Now, by that, she meant specifically VAT, income tax, or national insurance for employees. but she didn't rule herself out of raising national insurance for employers. Now, yes, in a very technical sense, that doesn't affect working people, but of course companies who are now forced to pay more national insurance for their employees will make decisions because of that. So, for example, there are leaders of care homes, there are retail managers who are choosing to fire staff or not hire staff in order to meet the cost of those new national insurance contributions. That is having a very real effect on the economy. The private sector has shrunk to the smallest it's been in 13 months, and the pound is at a low against the dollar. If Rachel Reeves is right, then this will be sort of a temporary shock, and in the next few months, possibly years, the Labour government will be able to set the ground for proper growth.
Yeah.
But we will have to wait and see, and at the moment, the outlook isn't looking that promising.
Olivia, just very briefly, how big of a headache do you think? It's a story we're going to be talking about after the break, but the CV row, how big of a story is that in Westminster?
Well, it's an awkward one. It's very embarrassing for Rachel Reeves. The latest issue is that she claimed that she was an economist at HSBC Bank. Actually, it turns out she was working in the customer relations department at HSBC. Now, that's obviously very, very different. How much it matters? Well, there's no sort of procedure. There's no protocol. She's not going to get fired by the Prime Minister for doing this. I think what's more dangerous for Rachel Reeves is that it becomes sort of embarrassing. It becomes like if you think back to the Barnard Castle issue with Dominic Cummings, people just found it sort of funny. They found it cringe, and people were talking about it in the pub. It became a meme on social media, and I think that's what's probably worrying Rachel Reeves now more than sort of specific direct consequences. If she becomes a joke figure, it'll be hard to get her authority back. At the moment, I don't think it's reached that stage. People are talking about it in Westminster. I'm not sure if it's gone that much further. But if it rumbles on like this and the revelations keep trickling down, it could get quite difficult for the Chancellor.
Yes, because, I mean, there was that whole row a while back about the plagiarism with a book that Rachel had published. You know, it starts to paint a narrative, you know. I mean, they were very quick to call Boris Johnson a liar, so we'll see what comes from this row. Olivia Utley, thank you very much for that update on the madness of Westminster. Let's see what the panel make of this. The contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker, and the former Conservative Special Advisor, Charlie Rowley. I mean, Charlie, it is interesting that this budget, the overall confidence in the budget, is dropping lower than you would on a Saturday night on the dance floor.
You've not seen my moves on a Saturday night. For some time, I don't go out.
You don't drink.
I don't drink. You're absolutely right. Look, confidence is absolutely bust, it seems, in this country now, because what people want, I think, from their politicians, they want them to deliver on what they say they're going to do, but they also don't want to be taken for a ride. And the public aren't fools. If you say during an election campaign repeatedly you're not going to raise national insurance, VAT or income tax, and then the moment you get into office you raise national insurance contributions, but, hold on, the small print was we weren't going to do it for employees. I mean, it's ridiculous. The public take that as read, that they're not going to raise taxes, whether it's on working people or whether it's on businesses, who, by the way, are the bedrock of our economy. They're the backbone of our economy. They are they employ the masses. It's not public sector workers who totally understand, might need a pay rise or might need better conditions or whatever. Of course, you can look at that, but the government has decided on all of its economic decisions to side specifically with public sector workers and attack the private sector, the growers, the entrepreneurs in this country, and that's why confidence, as you reported, is now dropped lower than as you said.
Not lower than the budget, by the way. The lowest since the Liz Truss mini budget. It went a lot lower after that than it has
We've
done
got
now.
to be careful here, though, because, I mean, GB News are going to be getting to the point where they ask me to walk down to London from Newcastle. They're going to be struggling so much with the national insurance bill. I mean, Michael, do you see this as a problem, or are you, as someone that's red in tooth and claw, are you champing at the bit for further tax rises?
I'm not sure I'm chomping at the bit for further tax rises. I mean, your correspondent before said lots of economists sort of disagree that this was a decent budget. Now, I haven't actually heard many people say that Labour didn't need to raise taxes somewhere. Because the point is, this money is going to public services, which people, by the way, in that general election voted to improve, right? I don't think anyone is really complaining that they gave an extra 20 billion to the NHS, because everyone can see that that's on its knees. And I know you're saying sort of growth comes from the private sector, but if we have an NHS where people are waiting 10 months for a hip operation, right, this is the kind of thing that holds back the private sector because their workers can't go to work. So they had to raise the money somewhere. I do think, you know, the fact they went for employers' national insurance, it was sort of a bit of a fudge because they wanted to make those commitments for the election and they had to find something that didn't quite break them. But I haven't really heard anyone suggest that that was a terrible way to raise the money. You do have to go for one of those big revenue raisers if you want to properly fund public services, and she had no choice but to do that. In terms of growth and in terms of what it means for the Labour Party, these are really early days. I mean, what the Labour Party are going to be thinking about is, in 3, 4, 5 years' time, do people feel richer than they did when we entered office? Now, that's what they'll be tested on. They've got planning reform down the line. If they have a bunch more measures which can increase economic growth, I think this will just be seen as a minor blip that everyone will have forgotten.
I mean, yes, you talk about planning reform. You know, yesterday I read a story. They're building a new stadium, an arena in Newcastle. They've built the car park, Michael. The Labour Council have built the car park and then realised they don't have any money for the actual adjacent, the joined-on arena. So we've got a car park.
People really care about parking.
I mean, it's the car park's
probably more popular than the stadium.
It's boarded up. So I just thought, oh, you talk about planning regulations. It seems in this country we just can't get anything done.
Yeah, and look, you know, some of that is because there's been over-regulation in some areas. If you try to cut some of that regulation too fast, too soon, you end up seeing maybe things like, you know, the Grenfell Tower. You know, the inquiry stated that actually there was too much cutting in regulation there. So you've got to get the balance right. But I think, look, it's about balance. And it just seems to me that there hasn't been that balance when it comes to the budget between balancing the public sector and the private sector when it comes to actually making, yes, tough decisions. Every budget is going to be tough. There's always going to be winners and losers. But first impressions count, and I don't agree necessarily that people will forget about this in a few months' time. When the mud sticks, that, you know, they've come into office, they've scrapped the Rwanda policy, they've cut pensioners' winter fuel allowance, they've now gone after farmers that keep food on our table, they've gone after the bedrock of our economy, the workers, the strivers, the entrepreneurs, the people that employ most people. All of that adds up to a government that, whilst building car parks without stadiums attached, all of that builds up to a realisation that maybe this government doesn't know what it's doing. And actually people won't feel the confidence. They won't, and business and the markets won't feel confidence in this government to go on to grow, to get the growth that this government wants in order to pay for the public.
The local elections aren't going to be great, are they?
Well, I think the big political mistake this Labour Party has made, and I think they recognise it, is that winter fuel payment cut, because that's something people really remember. They feel a bit attacked and it only raised £1 billion. I think the increase to national insurance on employers, that's raised £25 billion a year, right? So that's really significant. That gives them a lot more freedom to properly fund public services. And I do think people will have forgotten about that in 6 months' time, actually. So the things that people will remember is when they personally feel attacked, which is why the winter payment sort of change was a mistake.
You know, you say that, but Thatcher milk snatcher still resonates with some people.
But that's because some people felt personally attacked. That's what I mean. It seemed cruel. And I think with the winter fuel payment, Rachel Reeves probably thought that was a sensible technocratic decision, and people read it as cruelty.
Exactly.
So people will remember.
All right, thank you very much to both of you for that. We'll come back to them after the break. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, you can go to our website, gbnews.com. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. Lots more coming up, including more revelations over Rachel Reeves' CV. They've come to light as it's been revealed her real job was in customer relations, rather than an economist at Halifax. But isn't everyone a little bit over-generous on their CV? Is this OK? What do you think? All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Locals in Abingdon in Oxfordshire have signed a petition to keep the name of their local pub, and it's called The Midget. Now, this comes after a university lecturer led an 11-month campaign to change the name of the pub, and the owners, Green King, have caved in. But locals are fighting back, and GB News spoke to one resident, Leanne Thompson, for her thoughts earlier today.
I'm not feeling great about it, to be honest. You know, it's a pub that's been here for a very long time. It's called The Midget after a MG car. and they're changing it to the Roaring Raindrop, which a lot of people are not happy about. We know why they're changing it, but a lady apparently came in who was very upset at the offensive term for the name midget, but nobody here sees it as an offensive term. You don't see the midget and feel any kind of offence towards that. It's named after a car. If she was to actually come, she might actually know more about it, but apparently she's not even been into the pub. She's just heard about it and broadcasted on social media that she wanted the name changed because it's offensive, which as locals don't feel that way. It's the midget. It will always be the midget. And if you look, it's even still on Midget Close. So I don't know if they're going to change it to the Roaring Raindrop Close.
Do you know, you should walk into the midget now and go, do you serve shorts? And just keep going on the joke. It's named after a car, the MG Midget, that was manufactured in the town of Abingdon for a while. The car was released in 1961. The Boozer was built in 1974, giving huge pride to the area. It wasn't named after midgets, you know, the Snow White and the 7 vertically challenged individuals variety. It's named after a car.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Now, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has come under fire from economists and the public for changing her job history on her LinkedIn page. Her job history used to say that Reeves worked as an economist for the Bank Halifax. She's now backpedalled on her previous employment, confirming she worked in retail banking instead. That follows the accusations that she lied about her experience and, as I mentioned earlier, in the past about plagiarism with a book. But I want to know if you or anyone you know, have you ever, told a slight pokey on your CV in order to make yourself sound a little bit better to a prospective employer, perhaps? Well, let's see what my panel make of this. Michael and Charlie are still with me now. Michael, I hear you told all sorts of lies to get your job at Novara Media.
I didn't actually have to give a CV for that job because I kind of built my show myself, but I think a bit of exaggeration on a CV. I do think everyone does it. I also think, you keep saying she said she was an economist. Actually, she worked in customer relations. Now, I suppose the image that sort of evokes for people is she was answering the phones when a customer had a complaint, which is a very honourable job, but very far from an economist. She was actually head of planning customer relations and head of customers' mortgages. So to me, they sound like quite senior jobs. Are they jobs as an economist? Are they jobs as a senior person in a bank? I don't know. And I'm someone who knows quite a lot about these things, so I think most people in the public, when you say the public are pretty outraged about this, I'm trying to... Which members of the public are these?
Well, hang on, it sounds a bit HR-y, that job that she was actually in, right? I mean, that's a bit like someone working in HR at GB News saying they're a broadcaster.
Well, head of customers' mortgages. So I suppose if what you're talking about is how do you get customers, that presumably sort of... But what it will have a role in sort of what the terms of the mortgage will be. Do you see what I mean?
Well, you can't.
I imagine you need some economic literacy to do that job well.
I mean, Charlie, you're not buying it.
I'm not, I'm afraid. No, look, I mean, can I pull the two apart for a second? So if you just take CVs on its own, put Rachel to one side for a second. I do think people, because you've only got one shot when you send in your CV, and employers will be bombarded with hundreds of CVs, so you've got to stand out. So you want to make it look as best as you can. And I would look at it the other way sometimes. There are some people who, say if you just work in a supermarket, you might just be a cashier, but your boss asks you, actually, can you just manage the store over the weekend? Actually, can you take on a more sort of leadership role? Can you be a supervisor? You haven't got a promotion in a sense of your title, but you're doing the work of basically your bosses sometimes, and probably doing a better job, actually, than some of your bosses. So if you put down on your CV that you covered for senior management, that you were, deputy supervisor or deputy in a team of 2, then I think people will want to sell themselves because they want the credit for the jobs that they've actually done. So I do think that there is linguistical ways of promoting yourself that isn't technically lying.
Well, hang on, because Peter says Rachel Reeves actually, he says she lied on her application form for a charity she was going to be involved with when she put on the application form, that she was an economist. Guido had this story running on the political blog Guido Fawkes. I mean, she is an economist, though, because she's got an economics degree and an economics master's, hasn't she? So she's trained in economics, and then she had jobs which are clearly relevant to the economy.
But this is where I put the two trying back together. So I think on your CV, where you have done jobs where you are just trying to sell yourself, then I think, look, you can be as encouraging as you possibly can for yourself in terms of wording. However, Rachel Reeves was not an economist at the Halifax Bank. She was whatever the titles that we heard earlier on. She might have an economics degree, but she was not an economist for the Bank of for the Halifax. And now that she is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, she has built her entire reputation, the entire general election campaign, the confidence that the public had in the Labour Party, in Sir Keir Starmer being the Director of Public Prosecutions, next to Rachel Reeves, who was an economist at the Bank of England.
But she was an economist at the Bank of England. The question is, did she work there for 6 years or 10 years?
She was head of customer relations. But
that was at Halifax.
But that is an out-and-out lie.
Answer this question, then. Do you think, actually, this is bad for public faith in politicians?
I don't think anyone cares.
Yes. Oh,
I feel like this is a little bit of a reach.
See, I think you've got the Lord Alley stuff, you've got the line on the CV, you've got a whole host of things going on for this government where people are saying, you promised me change as far as cronyism's concerned. Sounds like you're all as sly as the last lot.
I mean, the point with Rachel Reeves and what she positioned herself as, the saying I was an economist at the Bank of England, it wasn't for her to say I'm like a Nobel Prize-winning economist. She was saying, I'm a technocrat, right? I'm a competent technocrat. I'm not particularly ideological. And she is a competent technocrat, who's not particularly ideological.
There's a real...
She was an economist at the Bank of England. That's what she kept repeating.
Not a day goes by where she didn't say I was an economist.
But she was an economist at the Bank of England.
But not at the Halifax.
So she said... So I think the line in the CV was, I worked as an economist at Halifax, the embassy in Washington and the Bank of England. It turns out she was an economist at the Bank of England and head of mortgages. I just think
if you're a junior doctor, if you say to patients, I'm a consultant, when actually you're maybe just sort of, the janitor in a hospital. I mean, people wouldn't forgive you. They wouldn't expect you. They wouldn't entrust confidence in you to go and operate on somebody's, eye or leg
say
or
you're
arm.
a dancer.
You're not a doctor, but you'll take a look anyway.
I tell you what, I've never lied on my CV, I tell you that much for free, and I'm still here somehow. They made a mistake, I think. You're with me, Darren Grimes on GB News. Lots more coming up on the show. First of all, though, we're going to get you news with Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Darren, and a very good afternoon to you. Let's take a look at your latest headlines. And we'll start with some breaking news. Hampshire Police has said a man in his 60s has died after a tree fell on his car near the A34 near Winchester. The force were called earlier this morning, where they found the driver of a black Mercedes dead at the scene. They added that it's so far unclear if the incident is related to Storm Bert, but the cause is under investigation. And we've also heard in the last few minutes that a 34-year-old man has also died in a single vehicle collision in Shipley this morning. The driver, a 34-year-old man from Bradford, was treated at the scene but pronounced dead a short time later. West Police have also confirmed that it's currently unclear if this is related to the current weather conditions. And as Storm Bert does continue to batter much of the UK, the Met Office has issued amber and yellow weather warnings, as well as 16 flood alerts being issued. This morning, winds of up to 68 miles per hour have been recorded and 13 centimetres of snow has fallen in some parts of the country. In Ireland, the Electricity Supply Board has said that high winds have caused power outages for around 60,000 customers. And in Lancashire, the championship game between Blackburn and Portsmouth is just one of the fixtures to be postponed. Our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie is in County Down for us today and has been urging people to take care if they're out and about.
Late last night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had snow. Now we've been battered by winds and really, really ice cold rain. It's not sleet. The rain is just so freezing cold. And what's happened is the roads are now flooded, trees are down, and underneath that line water is ice. So anybody that is out and about this morning, please, please be very, very careful.
Elsewhere, a man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after one man has died and another was critically injured during a shooting in Birmingham. Police were called to Edgbaston at around 11 o'clock last night. One man in his 20s was found in a car but was pronounced dead at the scene. Another man in his 30s was found injured at a bus stop and was then taken for treatment at hospital. West Midlands Police now say a man in his 30s was arrested and remains in custody. And Zayn Malik will begin his nationwide tour today, with this being his first performance since the funeral of former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne that took place earlier this week. Held in Buckinghamshire, Zayn attended the funeral on Wednesday alongside other former band members Harry Styles, Niall Horan and Louis Tomlinson. Zayn's tour was scheduled to kick off in Edinburgh on the day of Liam's funeral, but the date was moved as a result. Those are all the news headlines for me from now. In the next hour, it'll be Joe Casper with your latest headlines.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Remember to let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we've been discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay. Join that conversation there. We've got loads more coming up on today's show, including that horrible story that a man in his 60s has died after a tree fell on a car on the A34 near Winchester. And West Yorkshire Police said a 34-year-old man has died in a single vehicle collision in the early hours of this morning. I mean, it's unclear right now if the incidents were related to Storm Bert, but the cause are currently under investigation. We'll bring you the latest as Storm Bert batters Britain. Stay inside if you can. All of that and more to come. I'm Darren Grimes and you're with GB News, we're Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. There is a lot going on this weekend. Storm Bert bringing heavy snow, outbreaks of rain, strong winds as well. There will be disruption through the rest of Saturday and Sunday as well. We can see it nicely on the pressure pattern. Storm Bert sat to the northwest of the UK. Isobars tightly packed together, indicating strong winds as well. And overnight, we've seen heavy rain push north and eastwards, bumping into cold air. Temperatures down to -12 last night across parts of Scotland. So we've seen heavy snow. However, this is turning back to rain through the rest of the day for much of the country. An amber warning out across Scotland till the mid-afternoon period for snow and ice. Windy for everyone, gusts 60, 70 miles an hour around the coast, but turning incredibly mild, 16, 17 Celsius across the south. Further heavy rain pushing northwards as we go through the evening time. But let's look at that in more detail. We can see the snow starting to ease across Scotland, still temperatures barely above freezing. Outbreaks of rain around the coast, cloudy with further outbreaks of rain Northern Ireland and Northern England as well. Snow melting here leading to some localised flooding. Localised flooding across parts of England and Wales, particularly in the west, with some heavy outbreaks of rain and strong winds too. And very little changes as we move through the evening and overnight. Further outbreaks of heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, particularly across parts of England and Wales. It stays windy as well, again around the west and along the south coast as well. Gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour or so. An incredibly mild night, temperatures 15 Celsius in one or two spots. Generally most places in double figures to start Sunday, but it won't feel that mild out there. Strong winds, outbreaks of rain across England and Wales. Something a little brighter, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, blustery showers here. The wind's picking up again as the centre of the low pushes a little closer through the day. Further rain just continues across England and Wales. Met Office warnings remain in force for wind and rain through the day. See you soon.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Now, Storm Bert has hit the UK with Met Office warnings, actually arguing that power outages and road closures are going to be necessary across the country this weekend. Snow, rain and wind alerts are already in place, with 2 areas in Ireland facing a rare red warning for heavy rain. Well, joining me now is our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Dougie, you're still there. That's still going on behind you there, trying to get these cars out of what's going on there. I mean, we've just heard that there are significant developments happening here in the rest of GB. I mean, I'm wondering, to what extent do you think, you know, Northern Ireland's seen the worst of it? What can we learn from what's happened thus far?
Well, as I said this morning, actually on the way down the road to report on it this morning, I caught ice with the car and nearly went through the hedge with it because you can't see the ice with the rain on top of it, and when it's so cold, and it has been so cold all week, there has been snow that has settled. At 3 o'clock in the morning, we had heavy snow. It turned to rain, but that rain didn't defrost the ice. And of course, any roads that were treated, it instantly washed the salt off. And all morning I had been appealing, please, please, when you get to that, be very, very careful, because the car you think's aquaplaning, and of course it's not. It's caught ice and away it goes on you. And only for the grace of God this morning, maybe was I. But yes, the storm has left quite a bit of damage behind it. We've been reporting today on power outages, floods and general disruption. And of course, where I'm standing now, there's 25 houses have been flooded out due to blocked drains from leaves that have fallen, as we discussed earlier on. And I'm joined now by David Brooks. David Brooks is another MLA for this area. David, it's a bit like waiting for a bus. I get one MLA and I got a whole lot at one time. Tell us what has really caused this? How many houses are affected, and what's in store for them?
Well, that's something that's going to be probably ascertained in the days to come. But as you say, the drains, there's also a station in the river that runs behind here that has been blocked with leaves in the past and caused similar issues here. We believe that it was cleared last night, but it was unprecedented weather during the evening that maybe has caused that issue again. So we will be talking to the Department of Infrastructure and trying to identify the issues. It's obviously very concerning for residents here, some of whom we have come out of their houses already, others that are still the fire brigade is still trying to get to them, but we will be trying to get to the bottom of what the issues are in the coming days.
And what will you be saying in Stormont tomorrow?
Well, look, I share the frustration of residents here. We need a permanent solution, and I will be challenging the Department of Infrastructure and the Minister for Infrastructure in Northern Ireland here that we need a permanent solution here. These houses, this has been an ongoing issue for some years now. This is by far the worst, but it had come close last year, but we need to see a permanent solution for them here today.
There's a lot of new building that's went on and around here, lots of estates being built. This is the old part of Dundonald. I mean, was the systems updated, the water systems, when those new houses were built?
Well, there has been some work that has been ongoing, and we thought, certainly the department had said that they thought that would have been a solution to the issue. Clearly, as we see today, it's not, and we'll be looking to what more needs to be done in future.
OK, David, thank you very much. Yeah, you can hear there from the MLAs of this area that they will be asking the questions tomorrow, and they definitely will be looking for answers and really how to update the situation here on the drainage systems. This all, of course, is on the back end of Storm Bert. It was very much quick as it came. As he said, it came within about 6 hours and left massive damage in the wake. And of course, we're now hearing across the UK from other tragedies that have happened.
Yeah, Doogie, one of our members, Philip, says, Doogie, what a trooper. He was on at 7 a.m. when I got up. I mean, I assume you've had 1 or 2 coffees in the cold.
No coffees this morning as yet. We'll get there. I've another hit to go, and then yes, I'll be home for a hot whiskey, I would think, and
Brilliant.
my feet up in front of a log fire.
Oh, well, that sounds absolutely marvellous. Doogie, you're an absolute hero. Thank you very much for that update there. I mean, it strikes me that, you know, the preparations, we know these things are going to happen, weather events will happen. Why are there never, you know, flood defences and all these other things put in place? That's what really frustrates me. Charlie and Michael are still with me now. Do you know what I mean? It's not beyond the wit of man. Where are your lot? You in housing and local government?
Well, yes. It's
your fault. Where are the flood defences?
I'm sorry. Well, we had the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Obviously, the Department for Environment will
pass in the buck.
Well, you were also in that department, weren't you?
Oh, I was. Yes, yeah. I might take that off my CV.
We were talking earlier about taxes, right? These things do cost money, right? And especially things such as flood defence, that's going to be really expensive, right? This is not cheap. It
Well, I'll
can't be
tell
done
you what,
on the cheap.
Michael, here we are. I agree with you. We ought to spend money on flood defences. So let's stop spending money on illegal migrants, on sending money abroad, and a whole host of other ways. And there you are. As Chancellor of the Exchequer, I would have that budget thinner than a rake.
Well, I mean, the biggest expenses are on the NHS and pensions, aren't they? So you're going to, you know, it's not the case that you can just say, let's just get rid of all the unpopular things and suddenly we'll have shed loads of money. Right? Most of the money is going on the things which voters will absolutely punish you for if you cut them remotely.
I think we need reform of the healthcare system as well.
I mean, totally, yeah. I mean, the difficult thing here is that the weather is now becoming even more unpredictable as the years go on. Yes, of course, you've got to have your flood defences where you know that there are sort of flood plains and where, you know, the number of houses, particularly in the southwest, more often than not, actually, you know, you remember those awful floodings in Cornwall about a decade ago, I think now. But, you know, the weather is now becoming even more unpredictable. But you're right, you know, it doesn't help when you have a resilience forum, which is in the Cabinet Office, which brings together the departments, the Home Office, the Security Service, plus DEFRA, plus Housing and Local Government, where you need to stump up cash to sort of see, you know, help people that might need to be evacuated or whatever. But it doesn't help if the central person that needs to be coordinating that, which is the Prime Minister, is out of the country more often than not. So there needs to be, and there is growing criticism of Sir Keir Starmer. I know you are the Prime Minister, you're on the world stage, you've got to represent the UK abroad. But when you know that there are so many domestic issues at home, including the weather, including, you know, people's lives that are at stake, because we've heard a couple of terrible stories today. You know, have all the preparations been made? You know, who was looking at where I think it was in the north, whatever the council that represents, you know, where were the gritters, the salt to prevent the roads
all
from
the grit
icing
had
up?
washed away apparently in the floods, so that was I know this. I'm an expert on Northern Ireland now.
You can't grit against a flood.
No, you can't. All right, Michael and Charlie, thank you very much for that. I tell you what, Charlie's got a point there. I think Sir Keir Starmer's been abroad more than a British Airways pilot. Anyway, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News. We've got lots more coming up. Did you know that supporting Brexit is not protected from workplace discrimination under equality law? Don't worry, I'm not talking about GB News. I'm safe for now. A Eurosceptic councillor, though, has lost her claim that she was bullied and harassed by her employer due to her anti-EU views. Do you think that political belief ought to be protected in this country? Scary times. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News. We're Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The sportswear brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over £220, which I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
So I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. You know, it'd be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019.
Oh.
And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's...
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Darren Grimes. Now, an employment tribunal has ruled that supporting Brexit is not protected from workplace discrimination. This comes after a woman faced harassment from colleagues for expressing her views, allegedly. The charity worker in question was sacked after she reposted offensive posts about immigrants online, claiming that her views were philosophical beliefs connected to the 2016 referendum and therefore protected under the Equality Act. So do you think that political beliefs should be protected? Let's see what my panel make of this. Michael and Charlie are still with me now. Michael, I'll start with you. I worry that in this country, the parameters of acceptable speech are becoming ever more narrow. Now, she may well have said I have no idea what this woman said online, but regardless of that, I think actually you should be able to say outrageous things because sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? I don't agree with some things that people from Novara Media say, but I wouldn't ban you from saying it.
Well, I suppose there's 2 different issues here, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think it does really matter that we don't know what she's tweeted,
yes.
right? So if she tweeted something which was directed at someone which we could all agree was sort of racist harassment, then we'd probably agree she was right to lose her job. If she tweeted, something else, we might disagree. We don't know what she's tweeted. I think what's important to say is, it was important you said allegedly there, because she claims she was bullied in the workplace because of her pro-Brexit beliefs. As far as I can tell, we don't have much evidence of that, and the judge seems to have decided against that. And what's important here is she wasn't, as far as I understand, fired because she supported Brexit. If you were an employer and you tried to sack someone because they supported Brexit, you would lose in a tribunal. What she had said is, yes, I may have tweeted something offensive, but this is okay because I only tweeted an offensive thing because I have this protected belief. And she was trying to make out as if, being in favour of Brexit was similar to being a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew. And the judge decided, actually, it's not really.
But hang on then, because in the rows around the transgender issue, sex-based philosophical beliefs are protected under the Equality Act. So where do we draw the line? I can see where the confusion would come from, because if you're told that as a woman who believes in biological sex and the immutable fact of that, you are told that that is a belief protected in law. So you can understand why people may be getting a little bit confused, can't you?
Well, not really at the time. But I mean, look, what she's basically done, this woman in this case, is she brought a counterclaim. She, retweeted, allegedly, as you say, a post that was racist. She lost her job. Now, some would argue that she's now trying to claim that she is claiming she was bullied in the workplace because of those particular views that were pro-Brexit. Brexit, by the way, I think means different people to, people who voted for it, whether it was on immigration or on the economy, or whether just taking back control of your laws. So I don't think there is a defined definition in law about what Brexit is, so put that to one side. When it comes to gender and identity, obviously, look, if you are someone who is transgender and you're awarded a certificate, then obviously you are protected in that way, as you should be.
But what the court decided was that Maya Forstater was also protected. So what's interesting here is there's two cases where this happened. So one was Maya Forstater, who is a gender-critical feminist. So I think maybe I don't actually know the details of the case, so I want to be careful here, but she had said some things that her colleagues found offensive, and she said, well, this is actually a coherent set of beliefs which I'm protected for. David Miller is the other one where people thought he said offensive things about Zionism, and he said this is a protected belief.
We've got to get to the end of the show, but in a word then, do you think we should be worried about free speech in Britain?
Not on the basis of this case.
No, I think we protect free speech. Free speech is encouraged. If we go down the line of too much regulation, then we silence people.
Charlie Rowley there and Michael Walker before him there. Thank you very much to the both of you. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News, or you have been. Thank you very much for your company. Don't go anywhere, because your Nana's up next. Everyone needs their Nana. And I'm back at 6 o'clock for the Saturday 5. First of all, here's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Over the rest of the weekend, Storm Bert continues to bring some wet and windy weather for many of us, and turning increasingly mild as well. Temperatures going from well below average to well above average over the next 24 hours. We can see that on the latest chart. Storm Bert just sat to the northwest with its centre, but outbreaks of rain across much of the country. Snow melt across northern England, Scotland as well, as that mild air continues to stream northwards. The rain particularly heavy across parts of England and Wales, northwest England, Wales, the West Country. Rainfall totals really building, some localised flooding. Exceptionally mild across England and Wales, temperatures 13, 14, 15 Celsius above where they should be during the day for this time of year. Sunday itself, a wet start across England and Wales. Outbreaks of heavy rain, some tricky travelling conditions first thing, some localised flooding,